Hello, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Blueprints of Deception. Quentin Holbrook stood at the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of his home office, gazing at the Seattle skyline he had helped shape. As one of the Pacific Northwest's most sought-after architects, his designs were both innovative and meticulous, qualities that defined not just his professional life, but his personal one as well. "Daddy, look what I made!" Leo burst into the room, his 12-year-old face bright with enthusiasm as he held up an intricate model building made from specialized architectural blocks, a birthday gift from Quentin. Quentin's stern features softened as he turned to his son. "That's impressive craftsmanship, Leo. The cantilever support system you've created shows real understanding." Leo beamed at the praise. Unlike his mother, who dismissed his architectural interests as nerdy, his father always took his creations seriously. "Mr. Sinclair says I could apply for the Advanced STEM program at Westlake Academy next semester. Your principal called me about that yesterday." "I'm proud of you," Quentin said, ruffling his son's hair. "The tuition increase won't be a problem. Mom said it's too expensive." Leo's voice dropped, his enthusiasm dimming. "She said maybe I should just focus on regular classes." Something flickered in Quentin's eyes, a momentary calculation. "Don't worry about what your mother says. I'll make sure you get every opportunity." As if summoned by their conversation, Vanessa Holbrook glided into the room, her blonde hair freshly styled, designer sundress perfectly pressed. To outsiders, she was the ideal architect's wife, beautiful, sociable, involved in all the right charities. Only Quentin had begun to see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. "There you are," she said, ignoring Leo and addressing Quentin directly. "The Montgomery's brunch starts in an hour. You need a change." "I have to finish these concept drawings for the Harbor View project," Quentin replied without looking up from his desk. Vanessa's smile tightened. "Quinn, we've discussed this. These social events are important for your career. The Montgomerys are on the board of the museum that's considering your firm for their new wing." Quentin noted the use of Quinn, a nickname she only employed when manipulating him in public or private. He despised it, but had learned to recognize it as a signal. "You go ahead. I'll catch up later," he said, his voice level. "Leo and I have some work to do on his science project." A flash of irritation crossed Vanessa's face before she regained her composure. "Fine. Don't be too late." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Westlake Academy called about Leo's tuition for next semester. I told them we're considering other options." After she left, Quentin exchanged a look with Leo. "Go get your project materials. We'll work in here." Once alone, Quentin opened a hidden panel in his desk, revealing a small monitor. He tapped a few keys, and a series of surveillance feeds appeared: the driveway, the kitchen, the master bedroom, the living room. A recent addition to the house that Vanessa knew nothing about. Quentin watched as his wife grabbed her phone in the kitchen, checking to ensure she was alone before making a call. "Hey," she purred into the phone. "He's not coming." "I know, I'm trying." "No, he's obsessed with his work, as usual." "Yes, I spoke to the school. Don't worry, I'll convince him. The Cayman account is almost ready." "I miss you too, Dominic." Quentin's jaw tightened as he closed the panel. This wasn't the first such call he'd intercepted. For 3 months, he'd been gathering evidence, building a case as meticulously as he designed his award-winning structures. The foundation was nearly complete. His phone buzzed with a text from Roland Pierce, the former military intelligence officer now working as his private investigator. "Subject D visited Palmer Holdings again today. Photos sent to secure server. Financial transactions flagged." Quentin allowed himself a small, cold smile. Palmer Holdings, his wife's family business that she thought he knew nothing about. The same business that her lover, Dominic Rollins, had been systematically helping her drain for the past year. "Daddy." Leo stood in the doorway, his arms full of project materials. "Are you okay? You look different." Quentin's expression immediately softened. "I'm fine, son. Just thinking about foundations, how important it is to build them correctly from the beginning." He helped Leo with his materials. If the foundation is flawed, eventually the whole structure will collapse. As they worked, Quentin made a mental note to call Tanner Calloway, his attorney and oldest friend. Phase 1 was nearly complete. Soon, it would be time to begin the demolition. Chapter 2. Structural Weaknesses. The Harborview security system design has a fatal flaw, Quentin explained to the firm's client, pointing at the blueprints spread across the conference table. If someone wanted to breach it, they'd exploit this vulnerability. You'd never see them coming until it was too late. The security consultant nodded appreciatively. That's why we hired Holbrook Designs. You see the weaknesses others miss. After the meeting, Quentin's business partner, Bryant Norwood, clapped him on the shoulder. Another impressed client. Though sometimes I wonder if your paranoia about security systems stems from your military consulting days. Quentin allowed a rare smile. Few people knew about his 3 years designing secure facilities for military contractors, work that had given him both connections and knowledge that went far beyond typical architectural expertise. Not paranoia if there are real threats, Quentin replied. Speaking of which, I need next Wednesday afternoon off. Personal matter. Everything okay with Vanessa and Leo? Brian asked. Leo's fine, Quentin answered, deliberately omitting Vanessa. Just some family business to handle. Later that afternoon, Quentin sat in Principal Sinclair's office at Westlake Academy, reviewing Leo's academic file. Leo's performance has been exceptional, Douglas Sinclair said, his salt and pepper beard neatly trimmed, his reputation as one of the most respected educators in Seattle well-earned. That's why I was surprised when Mrs. Holbrook called to discuss withdrawal options. Withdrawal? Quentin's voice remained measured despite his anger. There must be some mistake. She mentioned financial considerations and the potential move, Sinclair replied, watching Quentin carefully. She was quite insistent about receiving the refundable portion of next semester's tuition deposit. I see, Quentin said. And when was this conversation? Yesterday. She requested the funds be transferred to her personal account rather than the joint one on file. Quentin leaned forward. Douglas, we've known each other since college. I need to speak candidly. Principal Sinclair nodded, closing Leo's file. Of course, Quinn. My marriage is ending, though Vanessa doesn't know it yet. There's infidelity involved. He paused. Leo will not be leaving Westlake. In fact, I want him enrolled in the advanced STEM program. I'll wire the full year's tuition to the school tomorrow from my personal account. Sinclair's expression softened with understanding. I'm sorry to hear about your situation. Leo is a remarkable young man. He reminds me of you at that age. Keep this between us for now, Quentin said, standing. And if Vanessa contacts you again about withdrawal or finances, please let me know immediately. Of course, Sinclair promised. As Quentin turned to leave, the principal added, Quinn, there's something else you should know. At the spring fundraiser, there was a discrepancy with some of the donation records that Mrs. Holbrook helped process. Nothing was proven, but how much? Quentin interrupted. Almost $20,000. The board decided not to pursue it since an anonymous donation covered the shortfall the next day. Quentin nodded. Thank you, Douglas. That's illuminating. That evening, Quentin took Leo to dinner at their favorite steakhouse, making sure to give Vanessa no advance notice. When they returned home, Vanessa was furious. You can't just disappear with Leo without telling me, she snapped once their son was upstairs. I had tickets for the symphony gala tonight. We were supposed to sit at the Harringtons' table. You mean you had tickets? Quentin corrected calmly. I checked with your assistant. My name wasn't on the list. Vanessa faltered momentarily. That was a mistake. I told Brittany to add you. No, you didn't, Quentin said, pouring himself a bourbon. Just like you didn't tell me about withdrawing Leo from Westlake. Her eyes narrowed. We can't afford the tuition increase. You know how stretched we are with the lake house renovation. The renovation you insisted on, using contractors I've never met, with invoices that don't match the work completed, Quentin replied. Interesting how Dominic Rollins' art gallery is in the same building as Noble Construction. The color drained from Vanessa's face. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. Just making conversation about our finances, Quentin said with a coldness that made Vanessa take a step back. By the way, I handled Leo's tuition today. He's staying at Westlake. You should have discussed this with me first, she said, attempting to regain control. Like you discussed withdrawing him? Or the $20,000 that disappeared from Westlake's spring fundraiser that you organized? Vanessa's mask slipped, genuine fear flickering in her eyes. That's absurd. I need to check on Leo. As she hurried from the room, Quentin received a text from Roland. Subject: D meeting with offshore banking contact tomorrow. Surveillance in place. Quentin finished his bourbon in one swallow. The structural weaknesses were now fully exposed. Time to prepare for controlled demolition. Chapter 3. Breaking Points. The moment that shattered the final illusion came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Quentin had installed a voice-activated recording system throughout their home 3 months earlier, a security measure he'd told Vanessa was necessary after a break-in at Brian's house. The real purpose was documentation, gathering evidence for what he knew was coming. He was in his downtown office when the alert came through on his secure phone. The keyword tuition had been detected in his home kitchen. He opened the encrypted app and listened. I don't care what Quinn says. Vanessa's voice came through with perfect clarity. Leo doesn't need that overpriced school. He can go to public school like Quinn did. What did Holbrook say? A male voice, Dominic Rollins. He's being stubborn about it. Says he's already paid the full year's tuition. That's $60,000 we could use, Dominic said. The property in Costa Rica won't wait forever. I know. I'm working on it, Vanessa replied. Once we have the offshore account set up, we can move everything. Quinn will never know until it's too late. Silence for a moment, then sounds of kissing. Quentin's hand tightened around his phone. How much longer, Van? I'm tired of sneaking around, Dominic said. Just a few more months. I'll get the money for our trip from the tuition refund. Then we can finalize everything while we're away. Quinn is clueless. He trusts me with all the household accounts. What about Leo? Dominic asked, his tone making it clear the boy was an afterthought. He stays with Quinn, obviously. You know I was never cut out for motherhood. Quinn can have his little protege. Quentin ended the recording, his face expressionless despite the rage building inside him. He had suspected the affair, the financial deception, even her indifference toward Leo, but hearing it stated so coldly was still a shock. He dialed Tanner Calloway's private number. It's time, he said when his attorney answered. Initiate everything we discussed. All of it. Are you sure, Quinn? Tanner asked. Once we start this, there's no walking it back. I'm sure. I have the final piece of evidence. She's planning to use Leo's tuition money for a trip with Rollins while they finalize moving my assets offshore. Jesus, Tanner muttered. The custody papers are ready. The financial freeze can happen tonight. What about Leo? I'm picking him up from school in an hour. We'll go to the lakeside property. Make sure the papers are served at exactly 9 a.m. tomorrow. And the other matter? Tanner asked carefully. Proceed as planned, Quentin confirmed. Roland's team is in position. I want everything Rollins owns, everything he hopes for, everything he is. After ending the call, Quentin sat motionless for several minutes, his mind cataloging and organizing the events of the past year. The small inconsistencies in Vanessa's behavior, the unexplained expenses, the gradual emotional withdrawal. He had once loved her, or thought he did. Now, he felt nothing but cold, precise determination. When he picked up Leo from school, the boy immediately sensed something was different. Are we going home, Dad? Leo asked as they drove in the opposite direction. Not tonight, Quentin said. We're going to stay at the cabin for a few days. I thought we could do some fishing. Leo studied his father's face. At 12, he was perceptive, often seeing what adults try to hide. Is this about Mom and that man with the weird laugh? Quentin nearly swerved off the road. What man, Leo? The one who came to the house when you were in Chicago last month. Mom told me he was an art dealer, but I saw them kissing in the kitchen when they thought I was upstairs. Stopping at a red light, Quentin turned to look at his son. Why didn't you tell me? Leo looked down at his hands. Mom said if I told you, it would make you leave us. She said you were already looking for excuses to abandon us for your work. His voice wavered. But that's not true, is it? You wouldn't leave me. Never, Quentin said firmly, reaching over to grip his son's shoulder. I would never leave you, Leo. No matter what happens between your mother and me, you are everything to me. Do you understand? Leo nodded, relief visible in his eyes. What else did your mother tell you, Leo? That we might have to move soon. That you were bad with money and we were going to lose the house unless she fixed things. But that doesn't make sense because I heard you and Uncle Brian talking about how the firm won those big contracts. Quentin's jaw tightened. Your mother lied to you, Leo. We're not in financial trouble, and we're not losing the house. Then why are we going to the cabin? Because tomorrow, things are going to change. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Leo nodded solemnly. Always, Dad. Later that night, after Leo had gone to bed in the cabin's loft bedroom, Quentin sat on the dock overlooking the dark lake, his phone displaying a surveillance feed from his house. He watched Vanessa enter their bedroom with a glass of wine, checking her phone repeatedly. She made a call. He's not answering, she said to Dominic. And Leo's not answering either. They're probably working late again. What about the transfer? Dominic asked. I'll handle it tomorrow once the bank opens. The full refund from Westlake Academy, $60,000. Enough for our Costa Rica trip next month where we'll finalize everything. And Holbrook won't notice? He never checks the household accounts. Too busy with his precious buildings. She laughed. By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone with everything converted and moved offshore. Quentin ended the feed and opened his email, sending a pre-written message to a secured list of recipients. Tanner, Roland, and 6 others who had specific roles in what would unfold tomorrow. The subject line simply read, Execute. Chapter 4, Controlled Implosion. At precisely 9 a.m., as instructed, the doorbell rang at the Holbrook residence. Vanessa, still in her silk robe and expecting the courier with documents for the tuition refund, opened the door with a practiced smile. Mrs. Holbrook? The severe-looking woman at the door wore a tailored charcoal suit and carried a leather portfolio. I'm Fiona Westbrook from Callaway Legal. I'm here to serve you with these papers. Vanessa's smile faltered. There must be some mistake. My husband's attorney is... Mr. Callaway. Yes, Fiona interrupted. He's representing Mr. Holbrook in this matter. Please sign here to acknowledge receipt. Receipt of what? Vanessa demanded, not taking the papers. Divorce petition citing adultery, financial malfeasance, and abandonment. Emergency custody order for Leonard Holbrook. Temporary injunction freezing all joint assets pending court review. Fiona's voice was clinically detached. If you refuse to accept service, I'm authorized to leave these with any adult resident of the household and document your refusal. Vanessa snatched the papers, her hands trembling. This is ridiculous. Where's Quinn? Where's my son? I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Holbrook's whereabouts. The court has granted temporary full custody to Mr. Holbrook on an emergency basis pending the initial hearing. Fiona handed her a business card. Any communication should go through Mr. Callaway's office. Good day, Mrs. Holbrook. As the woman walked away, Vanessa frantically flipped through the papers, her face draining of color as she scanned the detailed allegations. Dates, times, amounts, all meticulously documented. Attached were photos of her with Dominic, transcripts of conversations, bank records showing suspicious transfers. Her phone rang. Dominic. Van, we have a problem. His voice was tight with panic. My accounts are frozen. All of them. The gallery too. What? Vanessa clutched the divorce papers. Quinn knows. He's filed for divorce, taken Leo, frozen everything. That's not possible, Dominic said. How could he know about Costa Rica? About the offshore accounts? I don't know, Vanessa hissed. But these papers have everything. Dates, conversations, bank details. Even his photos of us together at the lake house. The lake house is completely private, Dominic protested. No one could. He's an architect who specializes in security systems. You idiot. Vanessa interrupted. He must have had cameras installed. We need to meet. Now. Dominic's voice had shifted from panic to determination. Pack whatever cash and valuables you have. We'll figure this out. I'll be ready in 20 minutes, Vanessa said, already moving toward the bedroom. 30 miles away, in a small office building owned by one of Quentin's shell companies, Roland Pierce replayed the conversation that had just been captured by the surveillance system still active in the Holbrook home. Beside him, Quentin listened impassively. Right on schedule, Roland commented. Your wife's heading to the Anderson Gallery to meet Rollins. My people are in position. And the financial triggers? Quentin asked. Already activated. Every account they've touched is now flagged for potential fraud investigation. The offshore accounts they thought were secure have been frozen by Interpol, thanks to our friend at the Financial Crimes Division. And Leo's school? Principal Sinclair has been informed that Leo is with you due to a family emergency. The school's security has been enhanced as a precaution, though I doubt Vanessa would go there. Quentin nodded, checking his watch. Time for Phase 2. Is Tanner ready? Court order is already filed, just awaiting execution. At the Anderson Gallery in downtown Seattle, Dominic Rollins paced the back office, phone pressed to his ear. What do you mean you can't authorize the transfer? I'm the account holder, for God's sake. The bank representative on the other end remained firm. I apologize, Mr. Rollins, but your accounts have been flagged for review. It's an automated security protocol. We cannot override it without proper clearance. Then give me someone who can provide clearance. Dominic shouted, just as Vanessa burst through the door, her face streaked with angry tears. They've taken everything, she said without preamble. The joint accounts, my personal accounts, even my trust fund, all frozen. Dominic ended his call, his handsome face contorted with rage. This is a temporary setback. Quinn can't possibly have legal grounds for this level of financial restriction. You don't understand, Vanessa said, throwing the divorce papers on his desk. Look at the evidence. He has everything. Photos, recordings, financial records. He even has documentation of the money I took from the school fundraiser. As Dominic flipped through the pages, the color gradually drained from his face. This is comprehensive. How long has he been planning this? Does it matter? Vanessa snapped. We need to act now. I have about $20,000 in jewelry at home and maybe $5,000 in cash. What about your emergency funds? Dominic hesitated, averting his eyes. There's a complication. The gallery is leveraged to the hilt. I was counting on the Costa Rica property deal to clear my debts. What are you saying? Vanessa demanded. I'm saying I don't have emergency funds, Dominic admitted. Everything I had was invested in the gallery and the property options. If the accounts are frozen, the gallery's front door chimed, interrupting their conversation. Dominic moved to the office doorway and froze. Two uniformed police officers and a man in a suit stood in the gallery's main room. The suited man approached, showing a badge. Mr. Rollins? I'm Detective Walsh with the Seattle Police Department, Financial Crimes Unit. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize financial records related to an ongoing investigation. Investigation of what? Dominic asked, trying to maintain his composure. Wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit grand theft, the detective replied, handing over the warrant. We need to ask you and Ms. Palmer some questions. Palmer? Dominic looked confused. This is Vanessa Holbrook, my business associate. Detective Walsh consulted his notes. According to our information, she's been using her maiden name, Palmer, for certain financial transactions. Is that incorrect? Vanessa stepped forward. This is absurd. My husband is behind this. It's harassment related to our divorce proceedings that just began today. Ma'am, these investigations began 3 months ago based on suspicious transaction reports filed by multiple financial institutions, Walsh stated flatly. Now, I need both of you to remain here while we execute this search warrant. As the officers began photographing and cataloging the gallery's contents, Vanessa's phone rang. The screen displayed unknown caller. With trembling fingers, she answered. Hello. Van, it's Camila, Quentin's sister, whom Vanessa hadn't spoken to in over a year after a falling out. Is it true? Quinn's filed for divorce and taken Leo. Camila, I can't talk right now, Vanessa whispered, turning away from the detective. Where are you? Quinn's attorneys are looking everywhere for you. There's an emergency court hearing in 2 hours. What hearing? I just got the papers this morning. Quinn's attorneys filed for an emergency hearing citing flight risk after you emptied your closet and took your passport this morning. Camila's voice was tight with disapproval. The judge agreed to hear it based on the evidence presented. Evidence? What evidence? Vanessa's voice rose in panic. Security footage from your house showing you packing, plus some recorded conversation about leaving the country. Van, what the hell were you thinking? Vanessa's mind raced. The house had security cameras Quentin had installed after the break-in of Bryant's, but they were only in the common areas and exterior, not in their bedroom where she'd packed her bag. Unless, I have to go, she said abruptly, ending the call. She turned to find Detective Walsh standing directly behind her. Ms. Holbrook, we'll need your phone as well. The warrant covers electronic devices. As she surrendered her phone, Vanessa finally realized the magnitude of what Quentin had orchestrated. This wasn't just divorce proceedings. This was systematic destruction. Meanwhile, at the lakeside cabin, Quentin sat with Leo on the dock, fishing poles in hand, though neither was paying much attention to the water. Dad, why aren't we going home? Leo asked again. Quentin took a deep breath. Leo, your mother and I are getting a divorce. Do you know what that means? Leo nodded solemnly. It means you won't be married anymore. Tyler's parents got divorced last year. That's right. And right now, things are complicated with your mother. That's why we're staying here for a little while. Because of that man she was kissing? Leo asked bluntly. Quentin nodded. Partly. There are also some problems with money and trust. Leo was quiet for a moment, then asked, Will I still get to see Mom? The question struck Quentin like a physical blow. Despite Vanessa's betrayal and her callous words about Leo, she was still his mother. But Quentin had also heard her true feelings about motherhood, her willingness to abandon Leo. That will be up to the court to decide, Quentin said carefully, and partly up to your mother. She doesn't really want me, Leo said quietly, surprising Quentin with his perception. She gets annoyed when I talk about architecture or when I need help with school stuff. Leo, it's okay, Dad, Leo interrupted. I know Mom loves me in her way, but she doesn't like being a mom. I've known that for a long time. Quentin put his arm around his son's shoulders, marveling at the boy's emotional intelligence. You're an extraordinary young man, Leo. I want you to know that none of this is your fault. I know, Leo said. Mom told Melody that she got trapped when she got pregnant with me. I heard them talking last Christmas. Quentin's jaw tightened. Another betrayal to add to the list. Leo, look at me. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. The absolute best. Don't ever forget that. Leo nodded, leaning against his father's side as they looked out over the still water, waiting for the storm that was about to break. Chapter 5. Structural Collapse. The courtroom was nearly empty when Vanessa arrived, still wearing the clothes she'd hastily thrown on that morning, now rumpled from hours in the police station answering questions. Her attorney, Martin Graves, hastily retained after 3 other lawyers refused to take her case, looked grim. This is highly irregular, he muttered as they took their seats. Emergency custody hearings usually require days of notice, not hours. My husband has connections, Vanessa replied bitterly, and apparently a surveillance system I didn't know about. Graves frowned. About that. The recordings may not be admissible if you weren't aware of them. However, the financial evidence is much more problematic. Did you really transfer school fundraiser money to your personal account? It was a temporary loan, Vanessa hissed. I replaced it the next day. With money from your joint account with your husband, Graves pointed out. That's still misappropriation. Before Vanessa could respond, the side door opened and Quentin entered with Tanner Calloway. Quentin's face was expressionless as he took his seat at the plaintiff's table, not even glancing in Vanessa's direction. Where's Leo? Vanessa demanded, half rising from her chair. Mrs. Holbrook, please take your seat, the clerk admonished. The judge is about to enter. What followed was the most humiliating 90 minutes of Vanessa's life. Judge Patricia Montgomery, a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, reviewed the evidence presented by Tanner with growing disapproval evident in her expression. The surveillance recordings, legally obtained, as Quentin had filed the proper notification with the state when installing the system, clearly showed Vanessa discussing plans to leave the country with money from liquidated joint assets. Financial records demonstrated a pattern of misappropriation. And most damning of all, text messages between Vanessa and Dominic explicitly discussed using Leo's tuition money for their Costa Rica trip. Your Honor, Graves attempted, My client acknowledges some inappropriate communications, but maintains that Mr. Holbrook has orchestrated this situation to appear more severe than it is. She has no intention of fleeing with marital assets. Then perhaps she can explain why she attempted to withdraw the maximum cash amount from 3 different ATMs this morning. Tanner countered smoothly, presenting bank records. Or why travel arrangements to Costa Rica were made in her maiden name 2 days ago. Vanessa gasped, turning to Graves. That's impossible. We never actually booked anything. Judge Montgomery's gavel came down sharply. Mrs. Holbrook addressed the court, not your attorney. After reviewing all evidence, the judge's ruling was decisive. This court finds sufficient evidence of attempted dissipation of marital assets and flight risk to warrant temporary sole legal and physical custody of Leonard Holbrook to his father, Quentin Holbrook. All marital assets will remain frozen pending further hearings, with the exception of a $3,000 monthly allowance to Mrs. Holbrook for living expenses. Mrs. Holbrook is ordered to surrender her passport to the court within 24 hours. A full hearing will be scheduled in 30 days. As Vanessa sat in stunned silence, her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. Dominic's being questioned about the Palmer Holdings transfers. Police found documents in his gallery safe. He's offering testimony against you for immunity. When she looked up, Quentin was watching her, his expression still impassive. For a brief moment, their eyes met. There was no anger in his gaze, no triumph, only cold finality. Outside the courtroom, reporters had somehow gotten wind of the hearing. Cameras flashed as Quentin and Tanner emerged, both declining comment. When Vanessa appeared moments later, the questions became shouts. Mrs. Holbrook, is it true you embezzled from a school charity? Did you plan to flee the country with your lover? Why did you try to pull your son from his private school? Vanessa pushed through the chaos, Graves attempting to shield her from the worst of it. When they reached the parking lot, she rounded on him. How do they know? The hearing was closed. Court records are public, Graves said wearily. And your husband's firm just happens to be designing the new courthouse edition. He has connections throughout the system. So that's it? He wins? Takes my son, freezes my assets, humiliates me publicly. Mrs. Holbrook, with all due respect, the evidence against you is substantial. And this is just the beginning. He handed her a business card. This is my colleague who specializes in criminal defense. You should call her immediately regarding the financial transactions under investigation. Criminal defense? Vanessa repeated incredulously. For using my own family's company? For using your position as a board member of Palmer Holdings to authorize transfers without proper approval from other board members, Graves clarified. The company's legal counsel filed a complaint this morning. That's impossible, Vanessa whispered. I'm a majority shareholder. Not anymore, apparently, Graves said. According to the filings, your shares were transferred last month to a trust for your son, with your husband as trustee. There's a signature on the transfer documents that appears to be yours. Vanessa's mind raced, then settled on a memory, a stack of papers Quentin had asked her to sign related to Leo's college fund. She'd barely glanced at them, trusting that her husband was handling the technical details as he always did. He tricked me, she realized aloud. He's been planning this for months. Perhaps, Graves conceded, but the signatures were verified by 2 independent notaries. Contesting them would be difficult. As Vanessa drove to her sister Audrey's house, the only place she had to go now that the marital home was off limits by court order, her phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello, she answered warily. You stupid, selfish bitch. Dominic's voice was a furious hiss. Do you have any idea what you've done? What I've done? Vanessa nearly swerved off the road. Your accounts were frozen too. They found everything, Vanessa. The transfers from Palmer Holdings, the forged authorizations, the shell companies. They know I was accessing the company's funds through you. That's not possible, Vanessa insisted. Those transactions were untraceable. You said so yourself. Dominic laughed bitterly. Nothing is untraceable when someone knows where to look. Your husband didn't just stumble onto us. He's been 10 steps ahead the whole time. What are you saying? I'm saying your architect husband built a fucking trap, and we walked right into it. Dominic shouted. The Costa Rica property, owned by one of his shell companies, the offshore bank. They have a security system designed by Holberg Security Consulting. The detective who questioned me? Former client of your husband. Vanessa pulled over, her hands shaking too badly to drive. What are they offering you? Testimony for immunity, Dominic admitted. They have enough to charge me with wire fraud and money laundering. 20 years, Vanessa. You're going to testify against me? After everything? I'm not going to prison for you, Dominic said coldly. Your husband made sure there was an escape hatch for only one of us. Guess who that is? Dominic. It's over, Vanessa. You're on your own. The line went dead. Vanessa sat in her car for a long time, watching the Seattle rain blur the windshield, trying to comprehend how completely her life had collapsed in less than 12 hours. Her marriage, her son, her lover, her family's company, her financial security, all gone. Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number again. The necklace you're wearing is monitored. Remove it now and leave it in the car. Vanessa's hand flew to her throat, fingers closing around the diamond pendant Quentin had given her for their 10th anniversary. She'd always assumed the small blue light was decorative, part of the custom setting he designed. With shaking fingers, she unfastened the clasp and examined the pendant closely. There, almost invisibly embedded in the setting, was a miniature tracking device. As the full implications of Quentin's meticulous planning washed over her, Vanessa's phone rang once more. This time, the caller ID showed Quinn. When she answered, there was a moment of silence before Quentin spoke, his voice as calm and measured as always. You should have told me you wanted a divorce, Vanessa. I would have given you one. Clean, simple, dignified. He paused. But you tried to take my son. You lied to him about me. You planned to steal my money and disappear. Quinn, please, she began, her voice breaking. I'm not calling to negotiate, he interrupted. I'm calling to inform you that in exactly 2 minutes, the story will break on every major news outlet. Financial fraud investigation at Palmer Holdings. Charity embezzlement. Affair with suspected con artist Dominic Rollins, whose real name, by the way, is Peter Dennison, a fact I discovered within a week of your first meeting with him. You can't do this, Vanessa whispered. My parents' company, my family's reputation, should have been considerations before you decided to betray everyone who trusted you. Quentin finished for her. The company will survive under new management. Leo's trust now holds controlling interest with your sister Audrey as acting CEO. Audrey? She's working with you. She approached me 4 months ago with concerns about unusual transactions you were authorizing, Quentin explained. Unlike you, she actually reads financial reports. A notification chimed on Vanessa's phone, a breaking news alert. Just as Quentin had predicted. Why are you doing this? Vanessa asked, tears streaming down her face. If you knew about everything months ago, why not just divorce me then? Because you were willing to damage our son to fuel your affair, Quentin replied, a rare edge of emotion finally breaking through his control facade. You told him I might abandon him. You used him as a pawn. That's when I decided you wouldn't just lose me. You'd lose everything. The line went dead, leaving Vanessa staring at the news alert lighting up her phone. Palmer Holdings under investigation. CEO's daughter implicated in financial fraud scheme. Chapter 6. The Point of No Return. 3 weeks after serving the divorce papers, Quentin sat in Tanner Calloway's office reviewing settlement offers. The legal pad between them was covered with numbers, terms, and conditions. She's desperate, Tanner observed, tapping a counterproposal received that morning, offering to waive all claims to marital assets in exchange for dropped charges and restored visitation rights with Leo. The charges aren't mine to drop, Quentin replied. That's between Vanessa, Palmer Holdings, and the prosecutor's office. True, but you have influence. Audrey respects you, and the DA is your former client from the courthouse project. One word from you could change Vanessa's situation significantly. Quentin leaned back, considering. What's your advice as my attorney? Take the deal, Tanner said promptly. It gives you everything you wanted, full custody, all assets, clean break, without a protracted court battle that could traumatize Leo. And, as my friend, Tanner sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. As your friend, I'm worried about what this vendetta is doing to you, Quinn. I've known you since college. You've always been controlled, disciplined, but this level of calculated destruction. He shook his head. You've ruined her, Quinn. She's facing potential criminal charges, public humiliation, financial devastation. Is that enough? No, Quentin said simply. It isn't. What more could you possibly want? Justice, Quentin replied. Dominic walks away with immunity while Vanessa faces charges for crimes they committed together. That's not acceptable. So this is about Rollins now. It's about accountability. Consequences. Quentin stood, moving to the window, overlooking the Seattle skyline. They conspired to steal from me, from Leo, from Palmer Holdings. They planned to disappear with millions. And most unforgivably, they used my son as a pawn. Tanner studied his oldest friend, concern evident in his expression. The hearing is tomorrow. What do you want to do about Vanessa's offer? Reject it, Quentin said without hesitation. Counter with the original terms. Full assets and custody to me. Supervised visitation for Vanessa contingent on completion of psychiatric evaluation and parenting classes, and no intervention on the criminal matters. She'll never accept those terms, Tanner warned. She will when she realizes the alternative. Which is? Quentin turned from the window, his expression resolute. Rollins' team has uncovered 3 previous identity frauds by Rollins. In each case, he seduced wealthy, married women, convinced them to embezzle funds from family businesses, then disappeared with the money, leaving them to face consequences alone. And you're just now mentioning this? Tanner asked incredulously. I've been waiting for the right moment, Quentin replied. Tomorrow morning, Rollins will be arrested for these previous frauds. Without his testimony, the immunity deal collapses. Vanessa will face full charges as the primary actor rather than an accessory. Tanner shook his head in disbelief. You've thought of everything, haven't you? That's my job, Quentin said. As an architect, I have to anticipate every possibility, every weakness, every potential point of failure. Quinn, Tanner said carefully, have you considered what all this might do to Leo? He still loves his mother, despite everything. For the first time, Quentin's composure wavered slightly. Leo has been seeing Dr. Morrison twice a week. She says he's processing things remarkably well. He understands more than we give him credit for. And what about you? Tanner pressed. You haven't taken time to process any of this. You've been in tactical mode for months. I'm fine, Quentin said dismissively. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've turned into someone I barely recognize. The Quinn Holbrook I know designs buildings. This Quinn Holbrook designs destruction. Quentin was silent for a long moment before responding. When I discovered what they were planning, I had a choice. I could simply divorce Vanessa, fight for custody, move on with my life, or I could ensure she never had the power to hurt Leo or me again. His eyes met Tanner's. I chose the latter, and I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. The day of the hearing arrived with unexpected developments. As Quentin had predicted, Dominic Rollins was arrested that morning on charges related to his previous frauds. The news spread quickly through the courthouse, reaching Vanessa just minutes before the proceedings were to begin. She burst into the conference room where Quentin and Tanner were reviewing documents, her face ashen, her attorney trailing helplessly behind her. You did this, she accused, pointing a shaking finger at Quentin. You knew about Dominic's past all along. Mrs. Holbrook, this is highly inappropriate, Tanner began, but Quentin held up a hand to silence him. Yes, he admitted calmly. I knew within days of your first meeting with him. His pattern is consistent. Target wealthy, married women, encourage them to embezzle from family businesses, then disappear with the money once accounts are set up. Why didn't you warn me? Vanessa demanded, tears welling in her eyes. Would you have listened? Quentin countered. Or would you have dismissed it as jealousy, as an attempt to control you? Vanessa had no answer, knowing he was right. The offer on the table stands, Quentin continued. Full asset and custody transfer to me. Supervised visitation rights for you. Conditional on completion of court-ordered psychiatric evaluation and parenting classes. And the criminal charges? her attorney asked. Not my jurisdiction, Quentin replied. Your client committed crimes. Whether as a willing participant or as someone manipulated by a con artist is for the court to decide. I want to see Leo, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. After the hearing, depending on the outcome, Quentin said, Dr. Morrison believes it would be beneficial for him to have a supervised reunion with you. The child psychologist? Vanessa looked surprised. You've had him in therapy? Of course, Quentin replied, a rare flash of anger breaking through. Our son discovered his mother was having an affair, was lied to about his father's intentions, and was nearly pulled from the school he loves. Did you think I would just hope he sorts it out on his own? For perhaps the first time, Vanessa seemed to truly grasp the enormity of the damage she had caused. I never meant to hurt Leo, she whispered. But you did, Quentin said simply. Actions have consequences, Vanessa. It's time to face yours. The hearing proceeded as Quentin had orchestrated. With Dominic's immunity deal collapsed and the full evidence of financial malfeasance presented, the judge ruled entirely in Quentin's favor. Vanessa, faced with the reality of potential criminal charges without Dominic's testimony to mitigate her role, agreed to all terms. As she signed the final documents, she asked quietly, Was any of it real, Quint? Did you ever actually love me? Quentin paused, considering the question. Yes, he finally said. I did love you, but you didn't just betray that love. You weaponized it. You used my trust, my focus on work, my devotion to Leo as tools against me. I didn't start out planning any of this, Vanessa said. It just happened. Dominic made me feel special, wanted. No, Quentin corrected her. You made choices, every step of the way. No one forced you to steal from the school fundraiser. No one forced you to lie to Leo about me. No one forced you to plan an escape with millions in stolen funds. And now you've taken everything from me, Vanessa said bitterly. Not everything, Quentin countered. You still have your freedom for now. You still have the possibility of a relationship with Leo, if you earn it. That's more than you planned to leave me with. As Vanessa was led away by her attorney, her once perfect appearance now disheveled, her confident posture now defeated, Quentin felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a cold certainty that justice had been served. Later that evening, when he returned to the new apartment he and Leo had moved into while the house was being renovated, he found his son waiting anxiously. How did it go? Leo asked. Is Mom going to jail? Quentin sat beside him on the couch. That's still being decided. But the divorce is final, and you'll be staying with me, just as we planned. Will I get to see Mom? Yes, if you want to, Quentin assured him. Dr. Morrison will be there too, to help you both talk about what happened. Leo nodded thoughtfully. Dad, are you still angry at Mom? Quentin considered the question carefully. I'm disappointed in the choices she made. I'm sad about what those choices have done to our family. But I'm focused on moving forward with you, not looking back at her. I heard Uncle Tanner on the phone, Leo admitted. He said you destroyed Mom. That doesn't sound like moving forward. Quentin sighed, reminded again of his son's perceptiveness. Adults sometimes do things that are hard to understand, Leo. Your mother broke promises and trust in very serious ways. There had to be consequences for that. Like when I lied about breaking Brian's model last year, and you grounded me for a month? Despite everything, Quentin smiled. Something like that, but much more serious. The important thing for you to know is that both your mother and I love you, even though we made mistakes with each other. I know, Leo said. Dr. Morrison says it's not my job to fix grown-up problems. She's right, Quentin agreed, pulling his son into a hug. That's very wise advice. As Leo fell asleep that night, Quentin stood at the apartment window, looking out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a text from Roland. Rollins cooperating with authorities on previous frauds, offering information on international network. Your name came up as the one who exposed the operation. Interpol sends thanks. Another text followed from Tanner. Prosecutor offering Vanessa deal. Testimony against Palmer Holdings board members who were complicit in exchange for reduced charges. Your thoughts? Quentin didn't reply immediately. The destruction was nearly complete, the vengeance nearly fulfilled. Yet he felt no closure, no relief. Only the hollow certainty that he had done what was necessary to protect himself and his son from those who had betrayed them. His phone rang. Camila, his sister. "It's done," he said when he answered. "I know," she replied. "And now what, Quinn? What happens after vengeance?" "Rebuilding," he said simply. "For Leo. For me. Just make sure there's still a human being left to do that rebuilding," Camila warned. "I've never seen this side of you before, little brother. It's frightening." "It was always there," Quentin admitted. "I just never had reason to unleash it before." "Well, put it back in its cage now," Camila advised. "That boy needs his father, not an avenging angel." After ending the call, Quentin checked on Leo one more time, watching his son's peaceful sleep with a surge of protective love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Vanessa's supervised visit, continued legal proceedings, the ongoing renovation of their home. But tonight, as the architects of deception had been exposed and their structures demolished, Quentin allowed himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the foundations for something new and stronger could begin to take shape. Chapter 7. Surveying the Ruins. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Quentin stood in the newly renovated kitchen of their home, watching Leo prepare his science project materials with methodical precision. The house had been completely transformed, walls moved, security systems upgraded, and all traces of Vanessa removed. It was a fresh start, symbolically and literally. "Dad, did you see the new designs for the waterfront project?" Leo asked, carefully measuring ingredients for his experiment. "They're using your cantilevered glass concept for the observation deck." "I saw," Quentin replied, smiling at his son's interest. At 13 now, Leo was growing taller, his features beginning to mature into a striking blend of both parents. "Bryant thinks we might win a National Design Award for it." "Cool," Leo said, then hesitated before adding, "Mom might get out early." "For good behavior." Quentin's hands stilled on the coffee mug he was holding. Vanessa had eventually been sentenced to 18 months for financial fraud, her sentence reduced from the potential 5 years due to her cooperation with authorities. The scandal had rocked Seattle's social and business circles, with several Palmer Holdings board members also facing charges for their complicity in years of financial malfeasance that predated even Vanessa's involvement. "What do you feel about that?" Quentin asked carefully. Leo shrugged, not meeting his father's eyes. "Okay, I guess. Dr. Morrison says it's normal to still care about someone even when they've done bad things." "She's right," Quentin acknowledged. "Your mother made serious mistakes, but she's still your mother. She writes me letters every week," Leo continued. "She never mentions Dominic anymore. Says she was stupid and selfish." Quentin nodded, maintaining a neutral expression despite his internal reservations. Vanessa's prison correspondence with Leo had been approved by Dr. Morrison as potentially healing for their son, though Quentin reviewed each letter before giving it to Leo, a condition of the custody agreement. "The supervised visits have been going better," Leo added. "She actually asked about my science fair project last time instead of just talking about herself." "That's good," Quentin said, though he wondered if Vanessa's apparent growth was genuine or simply another performance. In his experience, people rarely changed their fundamental nature. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Quentin checked the security panel. It was Tanner, unexpected but not unwelcome. When Quentin opened the door, his oldest friend stood there with an uncharacteristically serious expression. "We need to talk," Tanner said quietly. Privately. After making sure Leo was occupied with his project, Quentin led Tanner to his home office, a completely redesigned space with enhanced soundproofing and security. "What's going on?" Quentin asked once the door was closed. "Rollins is dead," Tanner said without preamble. Quentin's expression didn't change. "Ow! Prison fight, apparently, though the circumstances are suspicious. He was in protective custody after testifying against his former associates. Someone still got to him. And you're telling me this because—" Tanner gave him a hard look. "Cut the act, Quinn. Did you have anything to do with this?" "No," Quentin replied honestly, "though I can't say I'm particularly devastated by the news." "The timing is problematic," Tanner continued. "Vanessa's parole hearing is next month. Rollins was supposed to testify about how he manipulated her, testimony that would have helped her case." Again, Not my concern, Quentin said coldly. Vanessa made her choices. Damn it, Quinn, Tanner exploded, uncharacteristically losing his composure. When does this end? You've won. You have Leo, the house, the company, everything. Vanessa has been publicly humiliated, financially ruined, and imprisoned. Isn't that enough? I told you. I had nothing to do with Rollins' death, Quentin repeated, though whoever did the world a favor. Tanner studied his friend intently. You know, when this all started, I supported you completely. Vanessa and Rollins deserve consequences for what they planned. But somewhere along the way, something changed. You crossed from justice into vengeance. Is there really a difference? Quentin asked. Yes, and the fact that you can't see it anymore is what worries me. Tanner sighed heavily. The prosecutor called me this morning. With Rollins dead, they're revisiting some aspects of Vanessa's case. There's a theory circulating that you might have orchestrated more of this than anyone realized. Quentin raised an eyebrow. Meaning some people are wondering if you set Vanessa up, manipulated events to make her actions appear worse than they were. That's absurd, Quentin said dismissively. She embezzled from her family's company. She planned to flee the country with stolen money. She conspired with a known con artist. All of that is documented and proven. Yes, but the question now is whether you knew about Rollins from the beginning and deliberately let the situation develop to maximize her downfall. Quentin was silent for a long moment. The truth was complex. He had indeed discovered Rollins' true identity early in the affair, and he had allowed certain events to unfold rather than confronting Vanessa immediately. But his actions had been defensive, protective, not manipulative. Whatever theories they're developing, they can't prove them, Quentin finally said. Because they're not true. Tanner didn't look convinced. There's more. Audrey Palmer visited Vanessa in prison last week. Their first contact since the scandal broke. According to my source, Audrey left looking shaken. 2 days later, she requested all the digital forensic reports from the Palmer Holdings investigation. Now Quentin's interest was piqued. Why would she do that? The case is closed. Maybe she found something that didn't add up, Tanner suggested. Look, Quinn, I'm telling you this as your friend. If there's anything at all, that could come back to haunt you, now's the time to tell me. There isn't, Quentin insisted. Everything I did was legal, if not particularly merciful. The conversation was interrupted by Leo knocking on the office door. Dad? Uncle Tanner? My experiment is ready if you want to see it. Tanner's serious expression immediately softened. Wouldn't miss it for the world, champ. As they followed Leo to the kitchen, Tanner murmured to Quentin, just be careful. This isn't over yet. 2 days later, Quentin received an unexpected call from Audrey Palmer, Vanessa's sister and now CEO of Palmer Holdings. He had maintained a cordial professional relationship with her throughout the ordeal, united by their shared determination to save the company from the damage Vanessa and the corrupt board members had caused. I need to see you, Audrey said without preamble. Today, if possible. It's important. They met at a quiet cafe far from both their offices, a neutral location where they were unlikely to be recognized. Audrey looked exhausted, the stress of rebuilding her family's company evident in the new lines around her eyes. Thank you for meeting me, she said after they had ordered coffee. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critically important. What's going on, Audrey? She placed a thin file folder on the table between them. I visited Vanessa last week. She told me something that seemed impossible, so I decided to investigate myself. And what did my ex-wife claim? Quentin asked, not touching the folder. That some of the financial records used to convict her were falsified. Specifically, the transactions showing her transferring funds to Rollins' offshore accounts. Quentin's expression remained neutral. The evidence was verified by forensic accountants and accepted by the court. Yes, but those verifications relied on digital records that originated from Palmer Holdings servers whose security system was designed by your consulting firm. Are you accusing me of something, Audrey? She shook her head. Not accusing, asking. I've reviewed the records myself now. There are inconsistencies in the timestamps, subtle but present. Digital forensics isn't an exact science, Quentin replied. Timestamps can be affected by server synchronization issues, daylight saving time adjustments, any number of factors. That's what I told myself, Audrey agreed. But then I had an independent expert examine them. She tapped the folder. His conclusion is that the records were altered approximately 1 week before the evidence was submitted to authorities. Professionally altered, but altered nonetheless. Quentin met her gaze steadily. And you think I did this? I think my sister is self-absorbed, materialistic, and deeply flawed, Audrey said carefully. I think she betrayed you and was planning something with Rollins that likely involved misused funds. But I also think the extent of her financial crimes may have been enhanced. To what end? Vanessa was guilty of serious offenses regardless. To ensure she had no chance of maintaining custody of Leo, Audrey suggested. To guarantee her imprisonment rather than probation. To destroy her so completely she could never recover. Quentin was silent, considering his response carefully. Audrey had always been the more perceptive Palmer sister, the one who valued substance over appearance. What do you want, Audrey? The truth, for starters, she replied. And then, depending on that truth, perhaps a reconsideration of your position on Vanessa's parole hearing. Even if your theory were correct, and I'm not saying it is, Vanessa still committed serious crimes. She still planned to abandon her son and flee the country with stolen money. Yes, Audrey acknowledged, and she's paid a heavy price. Her reputation is ruined. Her marriage is over. Her relationship with her son is damaged, perhaps beyond repair. The question is whether the additional punishment of continued imprisonment serves any purpose other than your desire for vengeance. Quentin leaned back, studying Vanessa's sister thoughtfully. You're asking me to support her parole. I'm asking you to consider whether your vendetta has gone far enough, Audrey corrected. Vanessa hurt you terribly, and she deserves consequences. But Leo still loves his mother, Quentin. Her continued imprisonment hurts him too. The mention of Leo struck home in a way nothing else could have. Quentin had justified every action, every decision as necessary to protect his son. But had he gone too far? Had his pursuit of justice become something else entirely? I'll think about it, he finally said, standing to leave. That's all I can promise right now. Later that night, after Leo had gone to bed, Quentin sat alone in his office, considering Audrey's words. On his desk lay 2 items, the file she had given him, which he had yet to open, and a thin stack of letters from Vanessa to Leo that he had intercepted and never delivered, judging them too manipulative or potentially harmful. His phone rang. Roland Pierce, the private investigator. I've got the information you requested, Roland said when Quentin answered. Rollins' death wasn't random. It was a professional hit, made to look like a typical prison altercation. Who ordered it? That's where it gets interesting, Roland continued. The money trail leads back to a shell corporation that's ultimately owned by Harlan Westfield. Quentin frowned. Westfield? The real estate developer? The same. And here's the connection. Westfield was negotiating to buy 3 properties from Rollins right before you exposed him. Properties that then became worthless when Rollins' assets were frozen and investigated. So Westfield had Rollins killed out of revenge for a failed business deal? Seems excessive. There's more, Roland said. One of those properties adjacent, a major development Westfield is planning. Without it, the project is significantly less valuable. With Rollins dead and the property in legal limbo, Westfield is now positioning to acquire it at a fraction of the original price. Keep digging, Quentin instructed. I want everything you can find on Westfield's connection to this. After ending the call, Quentin finally opened the file Audrey had given him. The technical analysis was complex but clear in its conclusion. Someone with advanced knowledge of Palmer Holdings security systems had altered transaction records to make Vanessa's financial malfeasance appear more extensive than it actually was. The realization was uncomfortable. While Quentin hadn't personally altered any records, he had instructed Roland to find everything on Vanessa and Rollins, a deliberately vague directive that he now recognized could have been interpreted as permission to enhance the evidence if necessary. Had his determination to ensure Vanessa faced maximum consequences led him to cross a line he had never intended to cross? And if so, what did that make him? Troubled, Quentin picked up the letters he had kept from Leo. Reading through them now, he recognized that while some contained subtle manipulations, others showed genuine remorse and love for their son. By withholding them all, had he been protecting Leo or punishing Vanessa? As dawn broke over Seattle, Quentin made a decision. His vengeance had gone far enough. Perhaps too far. It was time to focus not on destruction, but on rebuilding, for Leo's sake, if not for his own. Chapter 8. New Blueprints. The Seattle Correctional Facility for Women was a stark, institutional building that belied its modern rehabilitation philosophy. Quentin had never visited before, having arranged for Leo's supervised visits with Vanessa to occur at a family counseling center instead. As he was processed through security, he wondered what he would find: the polished, manipulative woman he had married, or the broken, repentant figure Leo described from his visits. Perhaps neither. Perhaps something in between. Vanessa was already seated in the visitation room when he entered. The orange jumpsuit hung loosely on her frame. Her once perfect hair now simply pulled back, her face devoid of makeup. She looked up in shock when she saw him. Quinn. The nickname slipped out automatically. Then she corrected herself. Quentin. I didn't expect. They just told me I had a visitor. Hello, Vanessa, he said, taking the seat opposite her. You look well. A bitter laugh escaped her. Now who's the liar? But there was no real venom in her words, only tired resignation. I spoke with Audrey. Quentin began without preamble. She shared her concerns about some of the evidence in your case. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. And you believe her? I'm looking into it, he replied carefully. If there were irregularities in how the evidence was presented, that would be concerning. Concerning, Vanessa repeated. That's one word for it. Criminal might be another. Quentin's expression remained impassive. I didn't come here to debate terminology. I came to tell you that I won't oppose your parole. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. Why? What's changed? Leo misses his mother, Quentin said simply. Despite everything, he loves you. Keeping you in here serves no purpose except vengeance. And that's not a lesson I want to teach my son. Our son, Vanessa corrected softly. Quentin inclined his head in acknowledgement. Our son. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history and shattered marriage hanging between them. I was going to leave you, Vanessa finally said. That part was true, but not with millions, not with everything you're claiming. Dominic convinced me you were hiding assets, that you were planning to leave me with nothing. She shook her head. I was a fool to believe him. Yes, you were, Quentin agreed. But perhaps I was equally foolish in how I responded. What do you mean? Quentin chose his words carefully. Well, I discovered your affair and your plans. I had options. I could have confronted you immediately, filed for divorce, worked through the legal system in a straightforward manner. Instead, I chose to orchestrate your complete destruction. Because I betrayed you, Vanessa said. Because I was going to take Leo from his school. Partly, Quentin admitted. But there was more to it than that. I wanted you to suffer as I had suffered. I wanted to ensure you could never threaten what was mine again. So I built a trap, and I waited for you to walk into it. And then you sprung it perfectly, Vanessa concluded, leaving me with nothing. No husband, no son, no money, no freedom, no reputation. That was the plan, Quentin acknowledged. And it worked exactly as designed. So why the change of heart now? Quentin considered the question. Because the architect has to know when the destruction phase is complete and when it's time to begin rebuilding. And because Leo deserves better than a father consumed by vengeance or a mother imprisoned for crimes that may have been exaggerated. Vanessa leaned forward, studying his face intently. Are you admitting the evidence was falsified? I'm acknowledging the possibility that in the pursuit of justice, certain aspects may have been emphasized while others were minimized. Quentin replied carefully. The legal term would be prosecutorial discretion. Always the precise language, Vanessa said with a flash of her old fire. You can't even admit you set me up. I didn't falsify evidence, Quentin stated firmly, but I may have allowed certain assumptions to go unchallenged when they served my purposes. Vanessa sat back, processing his words. And now? What do you want from me? I want what's best for Leo, Quentin said. He needs his mother in his life. A mother who puts his needs above her own, who doesn't lie to him or manipulate him, who doesn't use him as a pawn in adult games. And you think I can be that mother now? I think you have the opportunity to try, Quentin replied. Whether you take it is up to you. What about us? Vanessa asked. Is there any chance? No, Quentin interrupted firmly. That's non-negotiable. Our marriage is over, Vanessa. The trust is irreparably broken. But we can learn to be civil co-parents for Leo's sake. The disappointment in her eyes was genuine, Quentin noted. Perhaps there had been real feelings there once, before ambition and selfishness had corrupted them. Understand, she said quietly, and I accept those terms. All I want now is a chance to rebuild my relationship with my son. That starts with honesty, Quentin told her. Complete honesty with Leo, with the parole board, with yourself. No more manipulation, no more half-truths. I'm trying, Vanessa said, and for perhaps the first time since he'd known her, Quentin believed she was being sincerely vulnerable. Prison gives you a lot of time to think, to see yourself clearly. I don't like much of what I see, Quinn. The use of his nickname didn't bother him this time. Good. That's the beginning of change. As the visit concluded, Vanessa asked one final question. Did you ever love me, Quinn? Really love me? Quentin paused at the door. Yes, he said honestly. But I think we loved different versions of each other. Versions that never truly existed. 2 weeks later, Quentin sat beside Leo in the parole hearing room, listening as Vanessa addressed the board. Gone was the entitled socialite, replaced by a woman who spoke with quiet dignity about her mistakes, her regrets, and her hopes for redemption. When it was Quentin's turn to speak, he surprised everyone, perhaps even himself, with a statement. Vanessa Holbrook committed serious breaches of trust, both personal and professional, he began. But she has served significant time for these offenses, and continued incarceration serves neither justice nor the best interests of our son. I believe she has genuinely reflected on her actions and is prepared to rebuild her life in a more honest way. As Leo's father, I support her release on appropriate parole conditions, including continued counseling and monitored visitation as we work toward a healthy co-parenting relationship. The parole was granted with strict conditions including financial oversight, regular counseling, and a prohibition on leaving the state. As Vanessa was led from the room, her eyes met Quentin's in wordless gratitude. Outside the hearing room, Leo asked the question Quentin had been expecting. Does this mean Mom's coming home? Not to our home, Quentin explained gently, but she'll be living nearby, and you'll be able to see her regularly. First with Dr. Morrison present, then eventually on your own if things go well. Are you still mad at her? Leo asked perceptively. Quentin considered the question carefully. I'm disappointed in the choices she made, but I'm not angry anymore. Sometimes holding on to anger hurts us more than the person we're angry with. Like carrying a hot coal to throw at someone else, Leo said wisely. Exactly like that, Quentin smiled, impressed by his son's insight. Where did you hear that? Dr. Morrison, Leo admitted. She says forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or trusting again. It just means letting go of the coal. She's a smart woman, Quentin said, and you're a remarkable young man. As they walked to the car, Leo asked, what about the man Mom was with? Dominic? What happened to him? Quentin tensed slightly. The news of Roland's death had been kept from Leo, and Quentin intended to keep it that way. He's facing consequences for his actions as well. He said, not quite a lie, but far from the whole truth. That evening, Roland arrived at Quentin's home with a thick file. Everything on Harlan Westfield, he explained as Quentin led him to the office. It's worse than we thought. The file revealed a pattern of corruption and criminal connections that extended far beyond the Roland situation. Westfield had been systematically eliminating obstacles to his development projects, sometimes financially, sometimes through intimidation, and in at least 3 cases, including Roland's, through violence. What are you going to do with this? Roland asked after Quentin had reviewed the material. Nothing, Quentin said, closing the file. Roland's got what was coming to him, just not from me. As for Westfield, he shrugged. His business practices don't concern me. Roland looked surprised. Even with what he did to Rollins? Even knowing he'll likely do it again to others. That's a matter for law enforcement, Quentin replied. My focus now is on moving forward, not seeking new targets for retribution. After Roland left, Quentin sat alone in his office, contemplating the file. His initial instinct, to destroy Westfield as thoroughly as he had destroyed Vanessa, was still there, but diminished. The architect in him recognized it was time for a new design, a new structure built not on the ruins of the past, but on fresh foundations. He placed the Westfield file in his office safe, then retrieved a set of blueprints, his design for a children's hospital that had been on hold during the turmoil of the past year. Tomorrow, he would present them to the board. It was time to create again, not destroy. As he studied the plans, his phone rang. An unknown number. Holbrook, he answered. Mr. Holbrook, this is Detective Walsh, came the familiar voice of the officer who had investigated Vanessa and Rollins. I was hoping we could meet tomorrow to discuss some new developments in an ongoing investigation. What investigation would that be? Quentin asked, instantly alert. The circumstances surrounding Dominic Rollins' death, Walsh replied. Some interesting information has come to light that I'd like to get your perspective on. I'm afraid I don't know anything about Rollins' death beyond what I read in the news, Quentin said carefully. Perhaps not directly, Walsh acknowledged. But you might have insights that would be valuable, particularly regarding Harlan Westfield and his business practices. Quentin's grip tightened on the phone. What makes you think I would know anything about Westfield? Just a hunch, Walsh said, based on certain patterns I've observed. You're a man who leaves nothing to chance, Mr. Holbrook. I can't imagine you wouldn't have investigated everyone in Rollins' orbit once you discovered his connection to your wife. Detective, I've cooperated fully with all legal proceedings related to my ex-wife and her former associate, Quentin stated firmly. If you have specific questions, I suggest you direct them to my attorney, Tanner Calloway. I'll do that, Walsh said. But consider this a courtesy call, Mr. Holbrook. If there's anything you think I should know, anything that might shed light on connections between Rollins, Westfield, and certain financial irregularities, now would be the time to share it. After ending the call, Quentin sat motionless, processing the implications. Walsh was clearly fishing, but the mention of Westfield suggested he was fishing in dangerous waters. He dialed Tanner's number. We may have a problem, he said when his friend answered. Detective Walsh is looking into Rollins' death and somehow connecting it to Westfield. And to me. How solid is the connection? Tanner asked. Unknown. But we need to prepare for the possibility that my investigation into Westfield could become problematic if Walsh starts pulling threads. I'll handle Walsh, Tanner assured him. But Quinn, this has to be the end. No more investigations. No more vendettas. No more elaborate schemes. Focus on Leo, on your work, on building something positive. That's the plan, Quentin agreed, looking at the hospital blueprints spread across his desk. I'm done with destruction. As he hung up, Quentin made a decision. Tomorrow, he would turn the Westfield file over to Walsh anonymously through Tanner. Let the justice system handle Westfield's crimes. His days as judge, jury, and executioner were over. For the first time in more than a year, Quentin Holbrook felt something close to peace. The foundations had been laid. It was time to build something new. Chapter 9. The Final Structure. 1 year later. The grand opening of the Eleanor Sinclair Children's Pavilion at Harborview Medical Center drew Seattle's elite, including Mayor Harrington, who cut the ceremonial ribbon alongside Quentin Holbrook, the building's architect, and Principal Douglas Sinclair, brother of the late pediatrician for whom the pavilion was named. This facility represents the future of pediatric care in the Pacific Northwest, the mayor announced to applause. Its innovative design creates spaces that heal both the body and the spirit. As cameras flashed, Quentin stepped forward to make brief remarks. Architecture at its best doesn't just create spaces, it creates possibilities. This pavilion was designed with one purpose: to give children and families facing medical challenges an environment of hope, comfort, and healing. Every curve, every window, every color was chosen with that mission in mind. In the front row, 14-year-old Leo watched his father with evident pride. Beside him sat Vanessa, looking healthy and composed in a simple but elegant blue dress, a far cry from the designer couture she had once considered essential. After the ceremony, as guests toured the facility, Quentin found himself alone with Vanessa for a moment. "It's beautiful, Quinn," she said sincerely. "One of your best designs." "Thank you," he replied. "How are things at the foundation?" Following her release, Vanessa had surprised everyone by declining offers to return to the social scene that had once been her entire world. Instead, she had begun working at a foundation supporting families of children with serious illnesses, initially as community service required by her parole, but continuing voluntarily even after those requirements were fulfilled. "Challenging but rewarding," she answered. "We're launching a new program next month to provide housing for families who travel here for treatment." She hesitated, then added, "Actually, I was hoping to discuss that with you. We need architectural consulting for some renovations to our residential facility." Quentin raised an eyebrow. "And you're asking me?" "You're the best," Vanessa said simply. "And it would mean a lot to me and to the foundation to have Holbrook Designs associated with the project." 2 years ago, Quentin would have seen this as manipulation. Now, studying her face, he saw only sincere purpose. "Send the proposal to Bryant," he said. "We'll see what we can do." "Thank you." She glanced across the room to where Leo was enthusiastically explaining some aspect of the building's design to his friends from Westlake Academy. "He's thriving." "Yes," Quentin agreed. "The advanced program at Westlake has been good for him, and so have your weekend visits." This was perhaps the most unexpected development of the past year: Vanessa's genuine dedication to rebuilding her relationship with Leo. The supervised visits had quickly progressed to regular weekend stays at her modest apartment, where she had created a space that reflected Leo's interests rather than her own preferences. "I have a lot of time to make up for," Vanessa acknowledged. "Years when I was physically present but emotionally absent." Before Quentin could respond, Tanner approached them, champagne flute in hand. "Congratulations, Quinn. The building is magnificent." "Tanner," Vanessa nodded politely. "If you'll excuse me, I should check on Leo." As she walked away, Tanner watched her thoughtfully. "She's different." "Yes," Quentin agreed. "I think prison and public humiliation have a way of shifting one's perspective." "Speaking of perspective shifts," Tanner said, lowering his voice, "Westfield's trial starts next month. Walsh wants to know if you'll testify about the financial connections you uncovered." Quentin shook his head. "No. The anonymous file we provided contains everything needed. I don't want Leo or Vanessa drawn into that mess." The investigation into Harlan Westfield had expanded far beyond Rollins' death, revealing a criminal enterprise that included bribery of public officials, money laundering, and connections to organized crime. The developer now faced decades in prison if convicted on all counts. "Walsh knows it was you who provided the information," Tanner pointed out. "He's grateful, by the way. This case will make his career. As long as my name stays out of it officially, his gratitude is enough," Quentin replied. "I've had enough of courtrooms and legal battles." As the event wound down, Quentin found Leo and Vanessa near the pavilion's signature feature, a 3-story atrium with a kinetic light sculpture that responded to movement in the space. "Ready to go, Leo?" he asked. "We have dinner reservations at Canlis to celebrate." Come," Leo asked hopefully. Quentin hesitated only briefly. "Of course, if she'd like to." Vanessa looked surprised by the invitation. "I wouldn't want to intrude on your celebration." "You're not intruding," Quentin said. "You're Leo's mother, and this is a night for family." The word hung in the air between them. Not the family they once were, but something new, something reconstructed from the ruins of their past. Later that evening, after dinner and after dropping Vanessa at her apartment, Quentin and Leo sat on their deck overlooking the Seattle skyline. "Dad," Leo began tentatively, "I know you and Mom will never get back together, but I'm glad we can still do things as a family sometimes." "So am I," Quentin said honestly. "Your mother has worked hard to change, and I respect that effort. Do you forgive her?" Leo asked directly. Quentin considered the question carefully. "Forgiveness is complicated, Leo. I've let go of my anger toward your mother. I've stopped seeking vengeance. I can appreciate the person she's becoming now. Is that forgiveness? Maybe a form of it. But you'd never trust her again," Leo concluded perceptively. "No," Quentin admitted. "Trust. Once broken, that completely can't be fully restored. But we can build a new relationship based on where we are now, not where we were then. Leo nodded thoughtfully. Like you always say about architecture, sometimes you have to demolish the old structure completely before you can build something better in its place. Exactly like that, Quentin agreed, impressed once again by his son's insight. The next morning, Quentin's phone rang as he was driving to the office. Vanessa's name appeared on the display. "Quinn," she began when he answered, "I need to tell you something important." The seriousness in her tone made him pull over. "What is it?" "Westfield's attorney contacted me yesterday. They want me to testify that you manipulated evidence in my case to distract from your own financial improprieties." Quentin's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "And what did you tell them?" "To go to hell," Vanessa replied simply. "I told them I wouldn't perjure myself to help a criminal escape justice, and that while you had been ruthless in our divorce, you had never broken the law." "Thank you," Quentin said, genuinely surprised. "Don't thank me for basic decency," Vanessa said. "I've done enough damage to our family. I won't let Westfield use me to hurt you, or, by extension, Leo." After a moment's silence, she added, "They offered to help overturn my conviction in exchange for testimony against you. A clean slate, they called it. And you turned that down?" Quentin asked, still processing the implications. "Yes," Vanessa confirmed. "My slate isn't clean, Quinn. What happened to me was partially my own doing. I've accepted that. I've built a new life I can be proud of, even with the marks on my record." For the first time since discovering her betrayal, Quentin felt something like respect for his ex-wife. "I appreciate you telling me this. They'll probably try other angles," Vanessa warned. "Westfield is desperate. Walsh told me they've approached several people from our circle with similar offers." "I'll handle it," Quentin assured her. "And Vanessa, thank you." That afternoon, Quentin sat in Tanner's office, outlining what Vanessa had told him about Westfield's desperate tactics. "We need to get ahead of this," Tanner advised. "I'll contact Walsh. Let him know Westfield's attorneys are attempting to suborn perjury." "Will that be enough?" Quentin asked. "Maybe not," Tanner admitted. "Westfield has resources and connections we can't match, and he's fighting for his freedom. People are most dangerous when cornered. What do you suggest?" Tanner leaned forward. "Remember when all this started with Vanessa? You told me you had a choice: simple divorce or complete destruction. You chose destruction, and you were extremely effective at it." "I'm not proud of that choice anymore," Quentin said. "It was excessive." "Perhaps," Tanner acknowledged. "But the skills you demonstrated, your meticulous planning, your understanding of systems and how to use them, those could be valuable now in a defensive capacity. You're suggesting I use the same approach with Westfield?" "Not for vengeance this time," Tanner clarified. "For protection. Westfield is coming after you, Quinn, and by extension, Leo. You need to neutralize the threat." Quentin was silent for a long moment, weighing the options. The architect in him appreciated the elegant symmetry, using the same skills that had once fueled his vengeance now to protect what he had rebuilt. "One condition," he finally said. "Whatever we do, it can't involve Vanessa. She's made her choice to protect our family at cost to herself. I won't repay that by drawing her back into a legal battle." "Agreed," Tanner said. "This stays between us, Roland, and whomever else we absolutely need." Over the next 3 weeks, Quentin meticulously constructed a defensive strategy against Westfield attacks. Unlike his campaign against Vanessa, which had been designed to destroy, this was engineered to neutralize without excessive damage, a shield rather than a sword. With Roland's help, he identified every potential witness Westfield might approach, every vulnerable point in his own past that might be exploited, every connection that could be leveraged. Then, systematically, he secured each vulnerability, not through threats or manipulation, but through transparency and preparation. When Westfield's attorneys approached Bryant with insinuations about financial irregularities at Holbrook Designs, they found he had already been briefed on the situation and remained unshakably loyal. When they attempted to use old military consulting connections to suggest improprieties in Quentin's past government work, they discovered those records had already been voluntarily submitted to Walsh for review and found completely legitimate. Most crucially, When they tried to claim the surveillance system in the Holbrook home had been illegally installed to entrap Vanessa, they ran into an unexpected obstacle. Vanessa herself, who publicly acknowledged that she had been informed about the system when it was installed, contradicting her own previous claims and effectively cutting off that line of attack. 2 days before Westfield's trial was set to begin, the developer's resistance finally collapsed. Facing overwhelming evidence and the failure of his attempts to distract and deflect, he accepted a plea deal that would send him to prison for 15 years. That evening, as Quentin shared the news with Leo over dinner, his son asked a question that caught him off guard. "Dad, are you and Mom friends now?" Quentin considered the question carefully. "I wouldn't say friends exactly, but we found a way to respect each other and work together for your benefit." "Why do you ask?" "Because she defended you against Westfield," Leo said. "She told me about it, said it was the right thing to do, even though it would have been easier to go along with what they wanted." "Your mother has changed a great deal in the past 2 years," Quentin acknowledged. "She's made difficult choices that demonstrate real growth. But you'll never forgive her completely," Leo stated, not asked. "Some betrayals leave permanent marks, Leo," Quentin explained gently. "That doesn't mean we can't build something new and worthwhile from what remains." Leo nodded thoughtfully. "Like the children's pavilion. You built it on the site of that old hospital wing that had to be demolished after the earthquake. Something better from something broken." "Exactly," Quentin smiled. "You're going to make a fine architect someday." "Actually," Leo said hesitantly, "I've been thinking about studying psychology instead. Dr. Morrison says I have good instincts for understanding people." For a moment, Quentin felt a flicker of disappointment. He had always assumed Leo would follow in his footsteps. But looking at his son's apprehensive expression, he realized how important his response was. "I think you'd be excellent at that," he said sincerely. "You have a depth of perception that would serve you well in helping others." The relief on Leo's face was immediate. "Really? You're not disappointed?" "Leo, my only aspiration for you is that you build a life of purpose and meaning," Quentin said. "Whether you design buildings or help design healthier minds doesn't matter. What matters is that you choose your own path." Later that night, unable to sleep, Quentin stood at the window of his bedroom, looking out at the city he had helped shape, building by building. So much had changed in the past 2 years. His marriage destroyed, his faith in others severely damaged, his understanding of his own capacity for ruthlessness expanded. Yet somehow, from those ruins, a new structure had emerged. Not perfect, not without flaws and compromises, but perhaps stronger in some ways than what had been before. His relationship with Leo had deepened through their shared ordeal. His professional work had taken on new meaning with projects like the Children's Pavilion. Even his shattered relationship with Vanessa had evolved into something he never would have anticipated. A respectful co-parenting arrangement based on honesty rather than illusion. The architect in him appreciated the irony. Sometimes the most beautiful and functional structures arose from the most complete demolitions. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Leo mentioned his interest in psychology. "Just wanted to say, I think it suits him perfectly. He has your analytical mind, but with an emotional intelligence all his own. We did something right there, despite everything else." Quentin found himself smiling as he replied. "We did, and he'll be extraordinary at whatever he chooses. Thank you for supporting him in finding his own path." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. The betrayal had cut too deep, the trust had been too thoroughly shattered for that. But it was acknowledgement of the present reality. They had both changed, both learned, both grown. And from the ruins of what they had destroyed, they had each, in their own way, begun to build something new. For Quentin Holbrook, master architect and ruthless defender of what he valued, that was enough. The demolition was complete. The reconstruction was well underway. And the final structure, while not what he had originally designed, would serve its purpose well. He would never forgive completely. He would never forget. But he had found a way forward that honored the lessons of the past without being imprisoned by them. And in the world of architectural integrity, that was perhaps the greatest achievement of all, a structure that acknowledged its flaws, yet stood strong despite them. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Discovery. The autumn rain hammered against the windows of the abandoned Whitaker house as Jeffrey Armstrong pushed through the rotting front door. The stench hit him first, mold, decay, and something else that made his stomach turn. As the town's premier real estate developer, he'd seen plenty of foreclosed properties, but this one felt different. Wrong. Hello. His voice echoed through the empty rooms. He was here because old Mrs. Whitaker's estate needed to be assessed before demolition, but the neighbors had reported strange noises. Probably vagrants, he'd thought. That's when he heard it, a soft whimpering from upstairs. Jeffrey Armstrong wasn't a man who startled easily. At 45, he'd built an empire from nothing, survived a bitter divorce, and learned that in business, mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. His steel-gray eyes and weathered face told the story of a man who'd fought for everything he had. But the sight that greeted him in the upstairs bedroom nearly broke him. Huddled in the corner, wrapped in newspapers and filthy rags, was a small boy, 6 years old, maybe 7. His dark hair was matted, his clothes were torn, and his enormous brown eyes held a terror that no child should ever know. "Mommy left me," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible. "She said she'd come back, but she didn't. It's been so long." Jeffrey's heart, which he'd thought permanently hardened, cracked. He approached slowly, hands visible, the way he might approach a wounded animal. "What's your name, son?" "Tyler," the boy said. "Tyler Armstrong." The world stopped. Armstrong, his daughter Ellen's maiden name. Ellen, who'd run away 18 years ago at 17, leaving behind nothing but heartbreak and silence. Ellen, who'd broken her mother's heart so thoroughly that Margaret Armstrong had died of what the doctors called a stroke, but Jeffrey knew was despair. "Your mother," Jeffrey said carefully. "What's her name?" "Ellen. Ellen Armstrong. She told me we were going to live with my daddy, but then she just left me here. She said to wait, but I've been waiting so long. I'm hungry. I'm so hungry." Jeffrey sank to his knees. This was his grandson, Ellen's son, left to die in this hellhole. While where was she? "Tyler," he said softly. "I'm your grandfather. I'm going to take you home." The boy's eyes widened. "Grandpa?" "Mommy said I didn't have a grandpa. She said everyone was gone." Another lie. Another betrayal. Ellen had stolen 18 years from him, and now she'd abandoned her own child. Jeffrey felt something cold and hard settle in his chest, a familiar feeling from his business dealings, but amplified tenfold. As he carried Tyler out of that house of horrors, wrapping him in his own coat, Jeffrey made a silent promise. If Ellen ever came back, she would face a reckoning unlike anything she could imagine. He was Jeffrey Armstrong, and he never forgave. He never forgot. Tyler fell asleep in the car, his small hand clutching Jeffrey's sleeve. The boy was home now. But Ellen had made her choice long ago, and when the time came, she would pay for every moment of suffering she'd caused. Chapter 2. Building an Empire. 12 years had transformed both Tyler and Jeffrey in ways neither could have imagined. The terrified, malnourished boy had grown into a confident 18-year-old with his grandfather's steel-gray eyes and a mind sharp enough to impress even Jeffrey's business associates. Tyler Armstrong stood 6 feet tall, carried himself with quiet confidence, and possessed an intelligence that cut through deception like a blade. More importantly, he understood who had saved him and who had abandoned him. Jeffrey had spared no expense on his grandson's education. Private schools, tutors, travel, everything Ellen had denied him. But the most valuable education Tyler received was watching his grandfather operate. Jeffrey Armstrong hadn't just built a real estate empire. He'd created a web of influence that stretched through every level of society. "Business isn't about being nice, Tyler," Jeffrey had explained during one of their evening talks in his study. "It's about being necessary. When people need you more than you need them, You hold all the cards. Tyler absorbed every lesson. He learned about leverage, about patience, about the difference between justice and revenge. Justice was what the courts provided. Revenge was personal, and it was an art form. During these 12 years, Jeffrey had quietly investigated Ellen's disappearance. Private investigators, forensic accountants, former FBI agents, he'd hired them all. The picture that emerged painted Ellen as a master manipulator who'd been running cons since leaving home. She'd married 3 different men under false names, cleaned out their bank accounts, and vanished. She'd been connected to insurance fraud, identity theft, and had left a trail of broken families in her wake. Currently, she was living in Miami under the name Ellen Fletcher, married to a wealthy contractor named Dwayne Fletcher. They'd been together for 2 years, the longest she'd stayed anywhere. Jeffrey's sources suggested she was planning something big, probably Fletcher's life insurance policy and business assets. She's gotten comfortable, Tyler had observed, reading the latest report on his 18th birthday. Comfortable people make mistakes. Jeffrey smiled. The boy understood. They'd also learned about Tyler's father, a young man Ellen had seduced and abandoned before Tyler was born. He died in a car accident when Tyler was 3, never knowing he had a son. Another casualty of Ellen's selfishness. Tyler had channeled his anger into purpose. He'd graduated high school at 16, earned a business degree by 18, and was already helping manage parts of his grandfather's empire. More importantly, he'd inherited Jeffrey's gift for reading people and his absolute refusal to forgive betrayal. The investigators say she might come back, Tyler mentioned during dinner at their sprawling estate. The property sat on 50 acres outside town, surrounded by land Jeffrey had acquired over the years. It was his fortress, his kingdom, and now it would be Tyler's inheritance. She will, Jeffrey replied with certainty. When Fletcher's usefulness expires, she'll remember that she has a son. She'll think 18 years is long enough for wounds to heal. She'll expect forgiveness. Tyler's smile was cold, eerily reminiscent of his grandfather's business expression. She'll be disappointed. The house phone rang, the private line that only a handful of people knew. Jeffrey answered, listened for a moment, then hung up. That was security, he said calmly. There's a woman at the gate claiming to be my daughter. She wants to see her son. Tyler felt his blood turn to ice, but his expression never changed. 12 years of preparation had led to this moment. Ellen Armstrong, Ellen Fletcher, had finally come home. What do you want to do? Jeffrey asked, though he already knew the answer. Tyler's smile was sharp as a razor. Let her in, grandfather. It's time for the family reunion. Chapter 3, The Prodigal's Return. Ellen Fletcher, she'd kept Dwayne's name for the legitimacy it provided, stood at the gates of her father's estate with her heart pounding. The property had grown. When she left 18 years ago, it had been impressive. Now it looked like a compound fit for royalty. She'd aged well, 35 and still beautiful, with the kind of practiced charm that had served her so well over the years. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her clothes expensive but not flashy. She looked like money, which was exactly the image she'd cultivated. But beneath the polished exterior, Ellen was desperate. The Miami operation had gone sideways. Dwayne was getting suspicious, asking questions about the money she'd been siphoning from his accounts. She needed a quick exit strategy, and Tyler represented her best option. A wealthy grandfather would pay handsomely for his grandson's safe return, and Tyler was old enough now to help her with more sophisticated cons. The gates opened, and Ellen drove her rented BMW up the winding driveway. The house took her breath away. What had been a large home was now a mansion, all clean lines and expensive materials. Her father had clearly done well for himself. Jeffrey Armstrong stood on the front steps, and Ellen felt a chill run down her spine. He looked older, grayer, but there was something in his stance that spoke of barely contained power. This wasn't the heartbroken father she'd left behind. This was someone far more dangerous. Ellen, he said simply as she approached. Hi, Daddy. She tried for the smile that had gotten her out of trouble as a teenager, but it felt forced. You look good. The house is incredible. You left your son to die. The words hit her like a physical blow. No preamble, no small talk, just the truth laid bare. Ellen's mind raced, calculating her response. I was young, Daddy. I made mistakes. But I'm here now. I want to make things right with Tyler. Tyler, Jeffrey called without raising his voice. The young man who emerged from the house bore little resemblance to the terrified child Ellen had abandoned. Tyler Armstrong was tall, confident, and handsome, with expensive clothes and an air of quiet authority. But it was his eyes that made Ellen's blood run cold. They were his grandfather's eyes, sharp and utterly unforgiving. Hello, Mother, Tyler said, his voice perfectly polite and completely empty of warmth. Ellen struggled to maintain her composure. This wasn't how she'd imagined this reunion. She'd expected tears, questions, maybe anger she could work with. Instead, she faced two men who looked at her like she was something that might scrape off their shoes. Tyler, baby, you've grown so much. I know I made mistakes, but I was just a child myself when I left. I'm here now. I want to be part of your life. I'm here for my son. The words burst out of her with practiced emotion. I've spent 18 years getting my life together, becoming someone worthy of being his mother. I know I hurt you both, but I'm different now. I can give Tyler opportunities, travel, experiences. Tyler's laugh was soft and terrifying. Opportunities? Like the opportunity to starve in an abandoned house. Or perhaps the opportunity to learn how to con innocent people out of their life savings. Ellen's facade cracked. They knew. Somehow, they knew everything. What do you want to do? Jeffrey asked Tyler, and Ellen realized with growing horror that the question wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. It was about her fate. Tyler's smile was cold and sharp, a perfect mirror of his grandfather's most ruthless expression. The expression of a man who'd learned that mercy was weakness and forgiveness was a luxury he couldn't afford. I want her to understand exactly what she threw away, Tyler said quietly. I want her to know the price of betrayal, and then I want her to pay it. Ellen Fletcher, who'd spent 18 years running from her past, realized that she'd finally run out of places to hide. The little boy she'd abandoned had grown into something far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined, and his grandfather had taught him well. The wolves had her scent, and there was nowhere left to run. Chapter 4. The Price of Truth. The library of the Armstrong estate felt like a courtroom as Ellen sat across from her father and son, 3 crystal glasses of aged whiskey untouched on the mahogany table between them. The walls were lined with legal texts, business journals, and photographs of Tyler's achievements, graduation ceremonies, academic awards, newspaper clippings about his early business successes alongside his grandfather. Ellen had been studying these images for an hour, and each one was a knife twist of what she'd missed, what she'd thrown away. Tell me about Dwayne Fletcher, Jeffrey said conversationally, as if asking about the weather. Ellen's practiced mask slipped for just a moment. How do you? I know everything, Ellen. The question is whether you're finally ready to tell the truth. Tyler opened a thick folder and began laying out photographs like tarot cards revealing a grim future. Ellen saw herself with each of her victims over the years. Michael Santos, the young teacher she'd married and bankrupted in Phoenix. Robert Hayes, the widower in Denver whose grief she'd exploited. David Kim, the tech entrepreneur in Seattle whose identity she'd stolen. 18 years, Tyler said softly. 18 years of destroying lives while your son learned to eat garbage and sleep in the cold. Ellen's composure crumbled. You don't understand. I was 17 when I left. I was scared alone. You were a predator, Jeffrey corrected. The age just made you more dangerous because people trusted you. The investigation reports were damning. Ellen had refined her techniques over the years, graduating from simple theft to elaborate long-term cons. She would target vulnerable men, recent widowers, divorcees, or lonely middle-aged bachelors, seduce them in a marriage, then systematically drain their assets before disappearing. But Dwayne Fletcher is different, Tyler observed, studying a photograph of Ellen's current target. Wealthy, yes, but not vulnerable. Not stupid. He's a successful contractor with ties to some very unsavory people in Miami. People who don't forgive being stolen from. Ellen's blood went cold. They knew about Dwayne's connections to money laundering operations, about the cash businesses that were fronts for much darker enterprises. She thought she was clever, skimming from accounts he'd never miss. But if Dwayne was as connected as Tyler suggested, "You're in trouble, aren't you?" Jeffrey asked. "Real trouble. The kind that ends with you floating in Biscayne Bay." "I need help," Ellen whispered, finally dropping all pretense. "Dwayne's getting suspicious. He's been asking questions, and yesterday, I overheard him on the phone with someone who scared him. If he finds out what I've taken—" "How much?" Tyler asked. "2 million, maybe more. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I just needed security, a nest egg." "For what? Another disappearing act? Another victim?" Tyler's voice was sharp as broken glass. Ellen looked at her son, really looked at him for the first time since arriving. This young man radiated the same controlled menace as his grandfather. But there was something else, something colder. Tyler Armstrong had been forged in abandonment and hardened by betrayal. He was everything she'd feared Jeffrey might become, but worse because he'd learned not to expect anything from the world except disappointment. "I want to make amends," Ellen said desperately. "I know I can't undo the past, but I can help you now. I have information about Dwayne's business, about his partners." "I can." "You can stop talking," Tyler interrupted, "because here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to Miami. You're going to return every penny you stole from Dwayne Fletcher. And then you're going to tell him exactly who you are and what you've done." Ellen's face went white. "He'll kill me." "Maybe," Tyler agreed with chilling indifference. "But that's the price of your choices. You spent 18 years running from consequences. No more." "Tyler, please. I'm your mother." "No." The word came out like a gunshot. A mother doesn't abandon her child to starve. A mother doesn't steal and lie and destroy lives. "You're nothing to me but a reminder of what I survived." Jeffrey watched this exchange with grim satisfaction. Tyler had learned the most important lesson of all, that some betrayals were unforgivable, that some people were simply too dangerous to trust. "There's another option," Jeffrey said quietly. "A way to ensure justice without—" He let the sentence hang. Ellen grasped at this lifeline. "Anything. I'll do anything." Tyler and Jeffrey exchanged a look that spoke of years of understanding, of shared purpose. They'd planned for this moment, prepared for every possible scenario. "You're going to help us destroy Dwayne Fletcher," Tyler said, "completely and utterly. And in return, we'll make sure you survive long enough to serve a very long prison sentence for your crimes." Ellen realized with mounting horror that she'd walked into a trap 18 years in the making. Her father and son weren't offering her redemption. They were offering her the chance to be useful one last time before facing the consequences of every choice she'd ever made. The little boy she'd abandoned had grown into her judge, jury, and executioner. Chapter 5. The Setup. The war room in Jeffrey Armstrong's estate would have impressed generals and CEOs alike. Multiple computer screens displayed financial records, surveillance photos, and architectural blueprints. Tyler moved between them with the precision of a conductor orchestrating a symphony of destruction. Ellen sat in the corner, no longer a player but a pawn, watching her son and father plan with the cold efficiency of military strategists. 3 days had passed since her arrival, and she'd learned that underestimating the Armstrong men was a fatal mistake. Dwayne Fletcher owns Fletcher Construction, which has contracts for half the commercial development in Miami-Dade County, Tyler explained, pointing to a complex web of business relationships on the largest screen. But the real money comes from laundering cash for the Costello family. Construction is perfect for it. You can inflate material costs, create phantom employees, bill for work that was never done. Jeffrey studied the financial flows with the eye of someone who'd built his own empire through legitimate means. He's smart. Multiple shell companies, offshore accounts, partnerships that obscure ownership. This is an amateur hour. No, Tyler agreed, which is why a direct assault won't work. We need to be surgical. Ellen watched in fascination and growing dread as her son revealed abilities she'd never imagined. Tyler had spent his formative years not just learning business from his grandfather, but absorbing lessons in strategy, psychology, and what he called applied justice. "The key is Marcus Costello, Jr.," Tyler continued, indicating a photograph of a young man in his 30s with expensive clothes and dead eyes. Dwayne's primary contact with the family. Marcus is impulsive, violent, and desperate to prove himself to his father. He's also skimming from his own operations. Jeffrey smiled coldly. And you know this how? Because I've been in Miami for the past 6 months, building relationships and gathering intelligence. Ellen's return isn't a coincidence. I've been waiting for her to lead me to Dwayne. Ellen felt the world tilt. You knew I was coming? I've known where you were for 2 years, Tyler replied without looking at her. I've been patient because I needed the full picture. Dwayne Fletcher isn't just a criminal. He's a monster who's destroyed dozens of families through his operations. Taking him down serves justice on multiple levels. The plan Tyler outlined was breathtaking in its complexity and ruthlessness. Ellen would return to Miami and play her role perfectly. The loving wife who discovered her husband's criminal activities and wanted to help the FBI bring him down. Of course, she wouldn't actually be working with the FBI. You're going to gather evidence of Dwayne's operations, Tyler explained. Bank records, client lists, details about money transfers. Everything. But I told you, he's getting suspicious. Which is why you're going to give him a perfect distraction, Jeffrey interjected. You're going to tell him about your son. About how you're being blackmailed by someone who knows about your past. Ellen's eyes widened. He'll want to kill Tyler. Let him try, Tyler said with chilling confidence. I'll be the mysterious blackmailer demanding $2 million for my silence about Ellen Fletcher's real identity. Dwayne will focus on eliminating the threat while Ellen gathers the evidence we need. The beauty of the plan was its psychological precision. Dwayne would see Ellen as a victim, sympathize with her predicament, and trust her completely while plotting Tyler's death. Meanwhile, Ellen would have access to everything they needed to destroy both Dwayne and Marcus Costello Jr. What happens to me after? Ellen asked quietly. Tyler's smile was sharp as winter. You'll testify against Dwayne and the Costello organization. Full cooperation with federal authorities. In exchange, you'll serve a reduced sentence, probably 15 years instead of life. And if I refuse, then you can explain to Dwayne Fletcher how you've stolen $2 million from him while simultaneously betraying his location and operations to federal authorities, Jeffrey said pleasantly. I'm sure that conversation will go well. Ellen realized she had no choice. She'd forfeited the right to choose when she'd abandoned her son 18 years ago. This was justice, Tyler's justice, and it was as implacable as winter. There's one more thing, Tyler said, pulling up a final photograph. It showed Ellen entering a hotel with a man who wasn't Dwayne Fletcher. Dr. James Morrison, plastic surgeon, married, father of 3. You've been having an affair with him for 6 months while planning to rob his practice's accounts. Ellen's blood turned to ice. She'd been so careful. We're going to save Dr. Morrison from your scheme, Tyler continued. Consider it a public service. But it also means you understand exactly how thoroughly we've been watching you. Every move, every victim, every lie, we know it all. The young man Ellen had abandoned was now demonstrating that he'd inherited his grandfather's gift for long-term strategic thinking, but with a patience and precision that was entirely his own. Tyler Armstrong had spent 12 years becoming the perfect weapon against people like his mother. 1 week, Tyler said. You have 1 week to gather everything we need. After that, Dwayne Fletcher and the Costello organization face the consequences of their choices, and you face yours. Ellen looked at her son one last time, searching for any trace of the terrified child she'd left behind. She found nothing but cold determination and a complete absence of mercy. She'd created this monster, and now it was going to destroy everything she'd built on the foundation of her betrayals. Chapter 6. The Hunt Begins. The penthouse suite overlooking Biscayne Bay cost more per night than most people earned in a month, but Tyler Armstrong barely noticed the luxury. His attention was focused on the sophisticated surveillance equipment that turned the living room into a command center worthy of a government operation. For 6 months, he'd been establishing his cover identity in Miami as Tyler Morgan, a venture capitalist with inherited wealth and a taste for high-stakes investments. The identity was bulletproof, complete with financial records, social media history, and references that would satisfy even professional investigators. Through his hotel room windows, he could see Fletcher Construction's downtown headquarters, where Ellen was playing her role perfectly. 3 days had passed since her return to Miami, and Dwayne Fletcher had swallowed the bait completely. Tyler's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Ellen. He wants to meet the blackmailer. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Warehouse District. He's bringing Marcus and 2 others. Tyler smiled coldly. Dwayne Fletcher thought he was being clever, luring a blackmailer into the open for elimination. What he didn't know was that Tyler had chosen the meeting location months ago, a warehouse owned by a shell company connected to Marcus Costello Jr.'s skimming operation. The beauty of Tyler's plan lay in its psychological precision. He wasn't just destroying his targets. He was making them destroy each other. At precisely 2 p.m. the next day, Tyler arrived at the warehouse driving a rented Mercedes, dressed in expensive clothes that screamed easy target. He learned from his grandfather that sometimes the best disguise was looking exactly like what your enemies expected. Dwayne Fletcher was waiting with 3 men, Marcus Costello Jr., whose reputation for violence was well-earned, Vincent "Vinny" Torres, a professional killer with dead eyes, and a 4th man Tyler didn't recognize, but whose military bearing screamed professional muscle. "You must be the businessman with the interesting proposition," Dwayne said, his voice carrying the false friendliness of a predator sizing up prey. Tyler smiled pleasantly. "Tyler Morgan. And you must be the man married to Ellen Fletcher. Or should I say, Ellen Armstrong?" The reaction was immediate. Marcus stepped forward, hand moving toward his jacket, while Dwayne's face went granite hard. "Interesting," Tyler continued conversationally, "because Ellen Armstrong is wanted for federal crimes in 4 states. Identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering. The FBI has a very substantial file on her activities over the past 18 years. "You're lying," Dwayne said, but Tyler could see the doubt creeping in. "Am I? Check her fingerprints against the federal database. Check her DNA against evidence from crime scenes in Phoenix, Denver, and Seattle. Or better yet, ask her about the $2 million she's been skimming from your accounts over the past year." The warehouse went dead silent. Marcus and Vinny exchanged glances while the 4th man's hand drifted toward his weapon. "You see," Tyler said, pulling out a tablet and showing them bank records, "Ellen's been very busy. She's stolen from you. She's compromised your operations. And now she's trying to use me to blackmail you for even more money. The woman you married is a professional con artist who's been playing you from day one." Dwayne's face had gone pale. Tyler could see him connecting dots. Ellen's reluctance to discuss her past, her uncanny knowledge of financial systems, her ability to charm anyone into trusting her. "But here's the interesting part," Tyler continued. "I'm not actually here to blackmail you. I'm here to offer you a partnership." Marcus laughed harshly. "You got balls, I'll give you that. But you just signed your death warrant." "Did I?" Tyler's smile was sharp as winter. "Because according to my information, Marcus, you've been stealing from your own family operations. Shell companies, inflated contracts, phantom employees. Sound familiar?" The tablet screen changed, showing financial records that made Marcus's face go white. Tyler had spent months documenting the young Costello's embezzlement, gathering evidence that would satisfy both federal prosecutors and family enforcers. "So here's my proposition," Tyler said calmly. "We eliminate our mutual problems. Ellen Armstrong disappears permanently, taking her federal heat with her. Marcus Costello Jr. faces the consequences of stealing from family operations. And Dwayne Fletcher gets to keep his business empire while partnering with someone who actually understands discretion." Dwayne was no fool. He could see the trap closing around him, but he could also see the opportunity. "What do you want?" 20% of the legitimate operations, full partnership in the financial services. In exchange, you get rid of a wife who's been stealing from you and a partner who's been stealing from his own family. The warehouse fell silent except for the distant sound of Miami traffic. Tyler could see calculations running behind Dwayne's eyes. Profit versus risk, opportunity versus threat. "How do we know you won't betray us like she did?" Vinny asked. Tyler's smile was completely without warmth. "Because unlike Ellen Armstrong, I honor my commitments. When I make an alliance, it's permanent. When I make an enemy, It's fatal. The young man who'd been abandoned as a child had grown into something far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Tyler Armstrong was offering them a partnership, but on terms that would ultimately destroy them all. He was his grandfather's student, but he'd learned lessons in patience and precision that even Jeffrey might find unsettling. The hunt was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Trap Springs. The confrontation came at sunset, in the same abandoned warehouse where Tyler had met with Dwayne Fletcher 3 days earlier. But now the dynamics had shifted completely, and Ellen Fletcher found herself at the center of a storm 18 years in the making. Ellen arrived expecting to meet Tyler alone. Another blackmail payment, another day of playing the desperate mother trying to protect her son. Instead, she found Dwayne waiting with Marcus, Vinny, and 2 additional men she didn't recognize. "Hello, darling," Dwayne said, his voice carrying a chill that made Ellen's blood freeze. "We need to have a conversation about your past." Tyler emerged from the shadows like a predator materializing from darkness. But this wasn't the polished young businessman Ellen had been dealing with. This was someone else entirely. Someone harder, colder, wearing Tyler's face but radiating menace like heat from a forge. "Hello, Mother," he said softly. Ellen's world tilted. "What are you doing here? How do you know your husband? Know his business? Know about Marcus's embezzlement?" Tyler's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I've been planning this for months, Ellen. Every move, every conversation, every betrayal has led to this moment." Dwayne stepped forward, his face dark with rage. "You want to explain how your blackmailing son knows about our operations? You want to explain how he has access to financial records that should be impossible to obtain?" Ellen looked between Tyler and Dwayne, understanding beginning to dawn like a nuclear sunrise. "You're working together." "In a manner of speaking," Tyler agreed, "though I prefer to think of it as applied justice." The warehouse doors slammed shut with a sound like a coffin closing. Ellen spun around to see Jeffrey Armstrong entering with 2 men she recognized as private security contractors, the kind who specialized in problems that needed to disappear. 18 years, Jeffrey said conversationally, his voice echoing in the empty space. 18 years since you abandoned your son to die. Did you think we'd forgotten? Did you think we'd forgiven? Ellen's mind raced, trying to process the scope of what was happening. Tyler hadn't been her victim. He'd been hunting her. The blackmail, the demands for money, even her return to Miami had all been orchestrated to bring her to this moment. "The beautiful thing about justice," Tyler said, pulling out a tablet and showing surveillance footage, "is that eventually everyone pays for their choices." The screen showed Ellen over the past week, stealing documents from Dwayne's office, photographing financial records, copying computer files. Everything she'd done under Tyler's direction, thinking she was gathering evidence to save herself. Every theft, every betrayal, every lie, Tyler continued. All documented, all admissible in federal court. "Congratulations, Ellen. You just provided evidence that will destroy both your husband's organization and Marcus's embezzlement scheme." Dwayne's face went dead white as he realized what had happened. "You played us. All of us." "I did," Tyler agreed pleasantly. "Because that's what you do to predators. You give them exactly what they want until they destroy themselves reaching for it." Marcus pulled a gun, but Tyler didn't even flinch. "I wouldn't, Marcus. Because in about 30 minutes, FBI agents are going to raid this warehouse based on an anonymous tip about a meeting between known organized crime figures. They'll find all of you here, along with evidence of money laundering, murder, and 18 years' worth of Ellen's criminal activities." Ellen felt her legs give out. She'd been played, completely, utterly, devastatingly played by her own son. "The only question," Tyler continued, his voice cold as winter, "is whether you're here when they arrive or whether you choose to run." Again, Dwayne's hand moved toward his gun, but Jeffrey's security contractors were faster. The warehouse filled with the sound of weapons being drawn and safeties being clicked off. "I have a better idea," Dwayne snarled. "We kill all of you and disappear. Start fresh somewhere else." Tyler laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "With what money? The accounts you've been using are frozen as of an hour ago. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been very busy today. Ellen watched in horror as her son destroyed lives with the same casual efficiency his grandfather destroyed business competitors. Tyler Armstrong had learned lessons in patience and precision that went far beyond anything she'd ever imagined. "You're all going to prison," Tyler said simply. Ellen for her 18 years of theft and fraud. Dwayne for money laundering and organized crime. Marcus for embezzlement and murder. The only variable is how long you survive in federal custody. Sirens began wailing in the distance, still far away, but getting closer. "Choose quickly," Tyler advised. "Run now and die trying to escape, or surrender and face the consequences of your choices." Ellen looked at her son one last time, seeing nothing but cold satisfaction in eyes that had once belonged to a terrified 6-year-old boy. She'd created this monster by abandoning him, and now he was destroying everyone who'd ever betrayed him with the precision of a surgeon and the mercy of winter. The sirens were getting closer, and Ellen Armstrong, finally understood that there was no escape from the choices she'd made 18 years ago. Chapter 8, Judgment Day. The federal courthouse in Miami buzzed with activity as the most significant organized crime prosecution in years reached its climax. Ellen Armstrong, she'd finally reverted to her real name, sat in the defendant's chair wearing an orange jumpsuit, her blonde hair now showing gray roots, and her face bearing the weight of 18 months in federal custody. Beside her sat Dwayne Fletcher and Marcus Costello Jr., both men having aged years in the time since their arrest. The warehouse trap had netted federal authorities not just 3 defendants, but evidence that had dismantled an entire money laundering network. Tyler Armstrong sat in the gallery, impeccably dressed and radiating the quiet confidence of a man who'd orchestrated justice with surgical precision. At 21, he'd become the youngest person ever to receive a federal law enforcement commendation for civilian assistance in a major organized crime case. "Your Honor," the federal prosecutor addressed Judge Sarah Morrison, "the evidence in this case represents one of the most comprehensive criminal conspiracies ever prosecuted in this district. The defendants engaged in money laundering, racketeering, fraud, and in the case of Marcus Costello Jr., murder." Ellen's defense attorney, a public defender overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence, made a perfunctory argument for leniency based on cooperation. Ellen had indeed provided testimony against the Costello organization, but the damage to her own case was irreversible. The evidence Tyler had orchestrated Ellen to gather was devastating. Financial records showing 18 years of systematic fraud, victim impact statements from dozens of families she destroyed, and forensic accounting that proved she'd stolen over $8 million across her criminal career. "Ms. Armstrong," Judge Morrison said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "you have perpetrated one of the most extensive patterns of fraud this court has ever seen. Your actions destroyed families, bankrupted innocent people, and showed a complete disregard for the law and basic human decency." Ellen forced herself to meet the judge's eyes, but she could feel Tyler's gaze burning into the back of her head. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "your abandonment of your minor child represents a level of callousness that defies comprehension. The psychological evaluations indicate that your son suffered severe trauma that affects him to this day." If only she knew, Ellen thought bitterly. Tyler's trauma hadn't made him weak. It had forged him into something infinitely more dangerous than anyone in this courtroom understood. "Ellen Armstrong, this court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for the first 15 years. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $8.7 million. The gavel fell like thunder. Ellen felt her legs give out, but the federal marshals were already there to support her. 25 years. She'd be 58 when she was first eligible for parole, assuming she survived federal prison. Dwayne Fletcher received 30 years for racketeering and money laundering. Marcus Costello Jr. got life, without parole for murder and organized crime leadership. The network Tyler had helped expose wouldn't be threatening anyone for generations. As Ellen was led away in shackles, she caught sight of Tyler one last time. He was watching her with the same cold satisfaction he'd shown in the warehouse. But there was something else, a sense of completion, as if a long chapter of his life was finally closing. After the sentencing, Tyler stood outside the courthouse with his grandfather, both men wearing expensive suits and expressions of quiet satisfaction. "Justice served," Jeffrey said simply. "Justice served," Tyler agreed. "But more importantly, a lesson taught. Actions have consequences, betrayal has a price, and some debts can never be forgiven." A reporter approached, recognizing Tyler from the media coverage. "Mr. Armstrong, how does it feel to see your mother sentenced to federal prison?" Tyler's smile was polite and completely empty. "Ellen Armstrong ceased to be my mother the day she abandoned me to die in that house. What happened today wasn't personal. It was simply the natural consequence of choices she made 18 years ago." The reporter pressed on. "Do you think the sentence was fair?" "I think," Tyler said carefully, "that everyone involved received exactly what they deserved. Justice doesn't always look like mercy, but it's always necessary." As they walked away from the courthouse, Jeffrey placed a hand on his grandson's shoulder. "Your grandmother would have been proud. Margaret always believed that some betrayals were unforgivable." Tyler nodded, thinking of the woman who died of heartbreak when Ellen ran away. She also believed that family wasn't about blood. It was about who stands by you when everything falls apart. They drove back to the Armstrong estate in comfortable silence, past the abandoned Whitaker house where Tyler's real life had begun 18 years ago. The property had been demolished and turned into a memorial garden, a place of beauty growing from the ashes of tragedy. Ellen Armstrong had finally faced the consequences of her choices. Tyler Armstrong had ensured that justice was served with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of winter. The abandoned child had grown into a man who understood that mercy was earned, trust was precious, and betrayal was a debt that compound interest made impossible to escape. Chapter 9. Legacy of Winter. 5 years after the trial, Tyler Armstrong stood in his grandfather's study, now officially his own, reviewing the quarterly reports from Armstrong Holdings. At 26, he'd expanded the family empire into new territories, technology investments, renewable energy, and most significantly, a private foundation dedicated to finding and rescuing abandoned children. The Tyler Armstrong Foundation had saved over 300 children in 5 years, providing them with homes, education, and most importantly, the understanding that their worth wasn't determined by those who'd abandoned them. "Sir," his assistant, Jordan Gentry, entered carrying the morning mail. "There's a letter here marked personal. No return address, but it's from a federal corrections facility." Tyler took the envelope without emotion. He'd been expecting this for months. Ellen Armstrong had been a model prisoner, and model prisoners sometimes earned the privilege of limited correspondence. The letter was brief. "Tyler, I know you'll probably never read this, but I needed to try. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, maybe 6 months left. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. I'm not asking you to visit or to care. I just wanted you to know that not a day has passed that I haven't thought about that little boy I left behind. You became everything I could never be. Strong, honorable, someone who protects instead of destroys. I'm proud of you, even if I have no right to be. I hope you find happiness. I hope you find love. I hope you never become as cold as the world made you. Ellen." Tyler read the letter twice, then fed it into the paper shredder beside his desk. He felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. Ellen Armstrong had become irrelevant to his life the moment the gavel fell at her sentencing. His phone buzzed with a message from his grandfather, who'd officially retired but still maintained an office in the building. "Dinner tonight? I have news about the Henderson Project." Tyler smiled. Jeffrey Armstrong, now 72, had found new purpose in the foundation work. The man who'd built an empire through ruthless business practices was now channeling that same energy into saving children who'd been discarded by the world. As Tyler prepared to leave for the day, he caught sight of his reflection in the office window. 26 years old, successful beyond most people's dreams, respected and feared in equal measure. He'd become everything his grandfather had trained him to be, a man who understood that loyalty was earned, trust was precious, and betrayal was a debt that could never be forgiven. But he'd also become something more. The foundation work had shown him that strength could be used to protect as well as destroy, that power could heal as well as harm. His phone rang. Jordan calling from the outer office. "Sir, there's a Detective Casey Richmond here to see you. Says it's about a child abandonment case in Broward County." Tyler's expression sharpened. "Send him in." Detective Richmond was a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands. He carried a file folder and wore the expression of someone who'd seen too much but never stopped caring. "Mr. Armstrong, I know your foundation does incredible work with abandoned children. We have a situation, 8-year-old girl, found in a condemned building, parents nowhere to be found. She's been asking for her mommy for 3 days." Tyler felt something twist in his chest. Not the cold satisfaction of revenge, but something warmer and more dangerous. "Hope. What's her name?" "Lily. Lily Hayes. We think she's been alone for at least a week, maybe longer." Tyler was already reaching for his coat. "I'll follow you to the hospital." As they drove through Miami traffic, Tyler thought about cycles. How trauma could create monsters or heroes. How abandonment could forge predators or protectors. Ellen Armstrong had tried to make him weak, but she'd instead made him strong. She tried to make him a victim, but she'd instead made him a guardian. The little girl in the hospital bed looked exactly like Tyler had 18 years ago. Terrified, abandoned, but not broken. "Not yet." "Lily," Tyler said softly, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "I'm Tyler. I heard you've been looking for your mommy." The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She said she'd come back. She promised." Tyler felt his heart break and harden simultaneously. Another abandoned child. Another Ellen Armstrong disappearing into the night. Another cycle beginning. "Lily," he said gently, "sometimes grown-ups make promises they can't keep. But I want to make you a different kind of promise. I promise that you'll never be alone again. I promise that you'll have a family who chooses to love you. And I promise that no one will ever abandon you again." The girl looked at him with the same desperate hope Tyler had felt when his grandfather first found him. The cycle was continuing,